Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 401. Cripple's Shocking Transformation. On the way back, Qin Mu first returned to disabled elderly village and discovered that it was the world of hen dragons. They clucked noisily and looked fiendish as though they were about to wage a war with the millions of heavenly feather clansmen. Qin Mu slaughtered the fiercest hen dragon. After it was roasted, the hen dragons finally knew their place and didn't dare to be impudent. There were no other people in the village, which meant that apothecary hadn't yet returned. Qin Mu left behind a note to let everyone who returned to know to head to Granny C's manor for New Year's before continuing on his journey. In the majestic secret waters pass, the army looked at millions of people closing in on them. There were only tens of thousands of soldiers guarding the city, so when had they ever seen such a spectacle before? Luckily, Ling Yuxiu walked over and explained their intentions. Only then did the general guarding the city open the city gate and let them in. The amount of food required for so many people was a problem. Heavenly Feather clansmen were vegetarians, so they didn't eat meat or fish. On the journey, they only ate some fruits, honey, and the rhizomes of flowers, living on little. Even so, the food consumed by millions of people was still a huge problem. Qin Mu asked Yu Zhaoqing about the fruits that Heavenly Feather clan ate from the pill trees in Heavenly Feather World. Those fruits were spirit pills, but they were rich in moisture, looking sparkling and transparent like crystals. At the same time, they had the benefits of spirit pills, allowing them to have no need for food or drink after a single one. Eating normal fruits could also satisfy their hunger. It was just that the taste wasn't as good. Pill trees. There are no plants that could bear spirit pills in Great Ruins or Eternal Peace Empire. Qin Mu asked about the effect of the fruits bore by the pill tree, and Yu Zhaoqing explained it to him in detail. Qin Mu then tried to refine such a spirit pill a few times, but she would shake her head every time he did. Finally, Qin Mu refined a furnace of pills the color of sky heavy with rainwater. He had spent quite a great deal of effort on it. After Yu Zhaoqing tasted it, she praised, "The taste is already 50 to 60% there." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and imparted the recipe to Yu Zhaoqing, so she could find the apothecaries of their Heavenly Feather clan to refine the pills themselves. That way, they wouldn't have to pluck wild fruits from all around to eat. These Heavenly Feather clansmen are only suited to live in the south where it's warm. That place is the only one suitable. Qin Mu was getting a headache while thinking about where to settle so many people. In the end, he decided to hand this headache over to Emperor Yanfeng and have his head ache. A flying ship in Secret Waters Pass rose into the air and brought Qin Mu's memorial to the capital city at a lightning-fast speed. In the meantime, Qin Mu summoned Dragon Rearing Sovereign, who revealed his true form to carry the millions of people on his humongous body. It was truly a spectacular sight to behold. Yan Jingjing clicked her tongue in wonder. She had never seen such a huge life form like Dragon Rearing Sovereign in Sun Well, so she couldn't help being curious. When they came to the south of Relax Prefecture, Qin Mu asked Heavenly Feather clansmen to station themselves in the forest nearby. He brought the girls to Granny C's manor, and Yu Zhaoqing also followed him here as they waited for Emperor Yanfeng's decree. Everyone who came to Granny C's manor couldn't help being astonished. The place was like a sacred ground in the mortal realm, like a paradise. The spirit qi and energy were so dense that they almost formed droplets of water. The place was also abnormally bustling as numerous palace maids hurried here and there to clean this and that up. Ling Yuxiu was astonished and called two of them over. "Jian Qi, Qin Qi, aren't the both of you supposed to serve Empress Dowager? Why are you here?" The palace maids were none other than the two girls who had once escorted Qin Mu to prevent him from being assassinated by Little Poison King Fu Yuanqing. They immediately greeted her and Qin Mu. Each of them had a dimple on one side of their faces, one the left and one on the right, complementing each other well. Jian Qi smiled and said, "Empress Dowager is here, so we are naturally here as well." Ling Yuxiu was astonished. "Empress Dowager is also here? Why is she here?" Jian Qi and Qin Qi looked at each other and revealed troubled looks. Qin Qi hesitated for a moment before saying, She chased Playboy Yu to this place. Princess, hush or else Empress Dowager will take our heads off if she learns about this. Jian Qi whispered closely beside Ling Yuxiu's ear. There are many women chasing after Playboy Yu, so when he revealed his true face, they were all shocked to see that it had been carved off. However, none of them left. These women are all very fierce and famous in the martial world. Some of them are even sect leaders. In the end, Empress Dowager couldn't take it anymore and fought fiercely with all of them. But she still couldn't suppress them, so they ended up all staying here. Ling Yuxiu looked troubled as she shifted her gaze to Qin Mu. Is Playboy Yu part of the village? He's Grandpa Apothecary, also known as Jade Face Poison King. Qin Mu was greatly delighted by the news. In that case, Grandpa Apothecary must also be here. He got cornered by all the women and can't run. Yan Jingjing looked around and, besides the palace maids that were coming to and fro, she saw some weird life forms all around. One was a fierce merman with a human head and a fish's body, while another was a terrifying merman with fish's head and human body. They were all hurrying to and fro in the manor, preparing for New Year's. There were also tree demons, flower demons, as well as strange demons that filled the mountains and wilderness. The tree demons had heads full of branches that held few leaves. Their temper was violent, and they would fight with deer demons frequently. Rascal! You brought so many maidens back for New Year's? Just as they were looking around, a fragrance assaulted their nostrils, and everyone looked toward the source of the voice. They couldn't help being stunned when they saw a beautiful woman walking over. She didn't look like a person from the mortal realm, but instead like she had come out from legends. She had a divine beauty, one without any flaw. The girls were all stunned, feeling their inferiority. However, they couldn't help feeling adoration and wanting to get close to her. Aunt! Xianxia went forward and said excitedly, You're also here. Granny C chuckled and said, Lassie Xiang, stay further away from my moor. We are family, so how could Aunt take his side? Xianxia retorted angrily with a black face. Granny C threw her to the side and walked toward the other girls. She examined them and smiled. I've raised Muir up and I'm much closer to him than you. Lassie Xiang, I had never carried you. Muir. She is a vixen and full of naughty thoughts, so you need to be careful with her. Hu Linger jumped up and shouted, I knew she's a vixen. Granny, I have looked after young master properly and didn't give any chance for all the little vixen to get close to him. Granny C came to Qin Mu's side and raised her hand, about to caress his head, but then couldn't help scolding angrily, You've grown taller. Why aren't you bending down? Qin Mu immediately bent down and Granny C caressed his head while sighing. Your height has almost caught up to that of Butcher. How did you grow so fast? To even know how to flirt around and bring girls back to see me? Her eyes grew red, about to fill with tears. Just a year or two away from home, and you're already starting your family. Granny, I'm not starting my family. It's Grandpa Blind who forced me to. You have met Yuxiu, and this is the Sun Guardian of the Sun Herders, the one who drove Sun Ship to chase off Imperial Preceptor. She's called Yan Jingjing. This is the chief of Heavenly Feather Clan from Heavenly Feather World, Yu Zhaoqing. I said I'm coming over for New Year's, and they all decided to follow. Granny C's tears turned into laughter, and she said, It's good that these maidens are here to meet their in-laws. Quick, come in and have a seat. The girls' faces were all red. Yu Zhaoqing, however, was the chief of a clan and her cultivation was powerful. She was a top existence in Heavenly Feather World, so she said, Senior sister, please don't be mistaken. I'm not one of His Highness's concubine. Granny C felt fonder and fonder as she looked at her pure and attractive appearance, which made her smile. Calling me Granny will do. There's no need for senior sister. It's too polite. Yu Zhaoqing hesitated for a moment. Since she didn't yet fully grasp how people addressed each other in this world, she could only call her Granny. Aye! Granny C gave a sweet acknowledgement. Overjoyed, Xianxia came forward and said, Granny. Granny C immediately put on a straight face. Call me Aunt. Xianxia felt extremely wronged and could only lower her head to call her Aunt. Granny C then brought them to her palace and ousted Qin Mu while saying, "Go to the halls nearby to find Cripple. That old fellow suffered losses and is now crying miserably." "Which hall?" Qin Mu immediately asked. "The layout here is the same as in the village, so he's in his house." Qin Mu immediately went out to search, and Granny C turned to the girls, growing happier and happier. She said to Yan Jingjing, "Sun Guardian is a little thin, you need to eat more. Yushio's body is pretty sturdy, very firm, though. I've met your father before, but I didn't talk to him. When will you be inviting the in-laws over?" Qin Mu found Cripple's hall and saw that blind, mute, deaf, and butcher were all there. There was also 2 village chiefs. He then noticed that it wasn't exactly right to say that. On one of the recliners was the limbless village chief, while the other one held Cripple who had no legs. Qin Mu immediately rushed forward and cried out, "Grandpa Cripple, this is—" Cripple's face was full of tears as he complained, "Muer, you're back? Your grandpa Cripple has fallen." Qin Mu composed himself and looked around, silently inquiring others about what happened. "The person who dug out my eyes reappeared and took Cripple's divine legs. Mute already went to Great Thunderclap Monastery to tell old Ma to be careful. That person will most likely find him for his divine fists." Qin Mu's heart shook, and he took in a deep breath before asking solemnly, "Village Chief, who is that person?" Before Village Chief could even answer, Apothecary, who had a tall and sturdy figure, walked in and said, "When I was running for my life, I met Taoist Ling Jing, and he said there was a godlike existence chasing after his life, wanting to take away his divine blood, so he had pleaded me to change his divine blood to protect his life. I asked Taoist Ling Jing about that person, and he said that he was an existence on par with Village Chief back then, and he called himself God." Village Chief let out a shaky breath and said, "His name is only a single word, and his surname is very weird, Xing. He's a very egotistical person. But according to logic, his age should be around the same as mine, so his lifespan should be ending in 2 years. Yet Taoist Ling Jing said he looked very young, just like a youngster." Worried entered Apothecary's face, and he said, "With your understanding of him, will he find old Ma? Old Ma is Rulai now. The 4 elements are vanity. So he won't come for New Year's and will be in danger staying alone in Mount Meru." Qin Mu couldn't resist asking, "This person that's called Xing'an, is he really that strong? To be able to fight his way into Great Thunderclap Monastery? I've no idea how strong he is now. However, I know that a person can spend all their energy into cultivating one part of their body to the god realm. That way they can be a match for the fake gods. If one cultivated all their parts to the god realm, they would not be far from becoming a real god. So he will definitely go to find old Ma," Village Chief said. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 402. Xing'an. Other than Granny C, everyone else in Disabled Elder Village had one thing they were great at, which could also be said to be their unique point. All of them had cultivated it to the god realm. Since their path to the divine bridge was broken and they couldn't advance into an even higher realm, they spent all their efforts in one area of research. This had made their abilities able to match those of the gods of high heavens, and they weren't weak like Dragon-Rearing Sovereign, that kind of fake god. Reaching God realm in one area alone allowed them to fight against the strong practitioners of high heavens. So what would happen if one could reach God realm in all areas? Wouldn't they become a real god? It was obvious that the strong practitioner called Xing'an walked such a path, but the strategy he took was not of researching things himself. Instead, he wanted to take what was already from other people's bodies. After all, a person's energy was limited, and without repairing the divine bridge, their lifespan was also limited. They could only live to 800 years. If Xing'an focused on cultivating and researching diligently, he could at most reach the god realm in 2 areas. On the other hand, by taking them off other people's bodies, he could gather a body on the god realm, making him like a true god. He was a strong practitioner that was on par with Village Chief, so accordingly to logic, he should be as old as Village Chief, yet he was still a youth. It meant that he had taken more than just Cripple's legs and Blind's eyes. There were definitely other strong practitioners that had suffered at his lethal hands. No one could clearly say which step his abilities had reached. Blind's eyes were the strongest divine eyes, and Cripple's legs were the strongest divine legs. Just these two things could allow him to rise to the top among the strong practitioners in their world. Yet he had definitely taken more God realm body parts from other people. With such a strong practitioner aiming for Old Ma's arms, Old Ma might not be his opponent even though he was Rulai. Butcher stood up and said, "I shall go find Old Ma." "Butcher, are your knives the strongest thing about you?" Village Chief suddenly asked. Butcher stopped in his footsteps. "No. The strongest part of me is actually my heart." Rumbles came from his body like the vibrations of heavenly thunder. It sounded like a giant beating drum on the battlefield, but it was just his heartbeat's rumble that made everyone's eardrum ring. He roused his chi and blood, and the sound of his heartbeat gave everyone a feeling that the thickest and heaviest heavenly knife had come out of its sheath. That knife was copious, sharp, and able to conquer every obstacle. Heaven Knife's knife wasn't the pig slaughtering knives in his hands, but he himself. The Heaven Knife required a strong energy source to execute it, and that energy source was his heart. Qin Mu opened his cinnabar heaven's eyes and looked at Butcher. What he saw wasn't a person, but a knife. In the center of it was a beating heart. Blood vessels stretched out from it like dragons, connecting to all parts of the knife like a network. With every beat, the heart sent matchless chi and blood to all parts of Heaven Knife. Butcher had cultivated his heart into a divine heart. Village Chief said, "He needs your heart, a divine heart." Butcher shook his head and said, "I'm not afraid of him. He's also not afraid of you. Even if you fight him, your chances of victory are slim. If you go to find Old Ma by yourself, you will definitely be intercepted midway." "Mute, what's your strongest part?" Mute was sitting while smoking his water pipe. When he heard Village Chief's words, he knocked the water paper out and put the pipe back on his waist. The furnace on his back suddenly ignited without fire, but everyone soon noticed that what had ignited it wasn't vital chi. What was overflowing with heat wasn't his furnace either, but his body. His vital chi became incomparably scorching, as though there was a furnace burning furiously in his abdominal cavity. It was like a small sun spinning frantically as it grew more powerful. It looked like a sun was continuously accumulating power for a world-shaking explosion. "Mute, your dantian has been refined into a divine furnace, so Xing will also need it." Village Chief then looked at Def and shook his head. "Def, even though your painting path has reached its extreme, Xing won't need what's on your body. He can't take away your skill." Def raised his head and took a glance at Apothecary. The quack shouldn't be in his eyes as well. His cultivation is too low. He's only at Celestia being realm. Apothecary smiled and said, "At least I won't starve to death no matter where I walk to in the martial world, unlike a certain painter." Def did not care about his words, feeling proud about himself. "The earnings from one painting of mine can buy a couple of mansions in the capital, while you can swiftly go bankrupt if you cause someone to die from your treatment." "Xing needs Apothecary," Village Chief suddenly said. Everyone was slightly stunned, so he continued, "He needs Apothecary's skill to help him change his body." Apothecary shuddered. "You guys don't need to worry. Butcher, Mute, Apothecary, follow me. We shall head to Great Thunderclap Monastery together. Deaf, cripple, blind, you guys shall stay. Xing's target is us, so he won't come for you guys. We shall be on our way then. Moore, you shall also stay and celebrate New Year's here. We'll go to Great Thunderclap Monastery to eat vegetarian meals. Let's go." Blind's expression was calm when he said, "My Long Tuo would like to meet him again." The divine spear was defeated under his hand, and the long-awaited revenge is due. Village Chief shook his head and said, "This isn't just about you. An expert is also needed here, since cripple won't do. When he had one leg, he could still run, but now both are gone. It's best if you stay." Blind frowned, but didn't say anything. Apothecary fetched a herb basket and placed Village Chief in it. They left with Butcher and Mute. Numerous women came, planning to leave with Apothecary, but he begged for mercy. "Good sisters, I will be back in a few days. I won't run away. Don't worry." After that, the women let him leave. When only Cripple, Blind, Deaf, and Qin Mu were left in the hall, Cripple started to bawl again. Muir is now the fastest in our village. I couldn't run even if I wanted to. Qin Mu immediately consoled him, and Cripple's emotions gradually stabilized. But then he saw that there was nothing below his waist again, and sorrow couldn't help flooding out from his heart. He cried again. I could still hop around on one leg in the past. I could still run extremely fast. But now I can't hop even if I wanted to. Grandpa Cripple, I can attach 2 deer legs for you. I see that there are quite a number of deer demons in the mountains. With my skill, it won't be hard to make the change. Qin Mu suggested. Deer's legs are crooked. I will have to kneel down after just walking a few steps. Don't want. Qin Mu could only leave it. Def found Cripple too noisy and went back to his own hall. Cripple was full of tears as he muttered about how Def was avoiding him. Blind also planned to go, but Qin Mu stopped him. Grandpa Blind, I met the number 1 divine eyes of founding Emperor Era, the eyes of Ziqing. They had imprinted some runes in my eyes, but there's only the imprints, no technique, so I don't understand how to activate them. When you came in, I saw that your eyes were very peculiar. I can feel a strange energy brewing in your eyes, but it's unstable. Blind put away his thoughts to find Xing and, full of interest in regards to founding Emperor Era's number 1 divine eyes. Can you light up those runes again? I would like to check their pattern. Cripple whined. My legs. Blind frowned and said, Cripple keeps whining, so let's go discuss this elsewhere until he runs out of words. Qin Mu immediately took leave from Cripple, and the 2 of them came to the lake beside the hall. Some mermaids with fish heads and human bodies ran over with fruits plucked from the mountains. Old master, eat some fruits. Qin Mu picked up a red fruit, but it screamed, Don't eat me. Qin Mu immediately placed the fruit down and saw over a dozen fruits rolling around in the plate. Ow, ow, I'm bleeding. Stop looking. When the god's blood was scattered on the mountain, all the fruits and trees became strange. Blind shook his head and said, All of the fruits have become demons. As they were talking, a bright red fruit grew arms and touched the red juice that had leaked out from its body. I'm bleeding, I'm dying. After saying that, it fainted. The other fruits immediately rolled over and cried miserably. Qin Mu's scalp crawled, and he hurriedly poured the fruits on the plate away. They became delighted, and even the fruit that had fainted also woke up. The demons rapidly rolled away, to the body of a tree demon that was passing by. They went to hang on the head of the tree demon and only then let out sighs of relief. Suddenly, a deer demon that was beside the tree demon sneakily took a bite from a fruit. The fruit demons exclaimed and cried miserably again, cursing the deer demon. The tree demon was furious and fought with the deer demon. Qin Mu was astonished. He looked at the 2 demons that were fighting with a blank gaze. The mermaids ran over and plucked the fruits off the tree demon again, sending them right to Qin Mu and Blind's face. I'm already used to the sight of strange things. Blind shook his head. You haven't gone up the mountain, that's where the really weird stuff exists. The grass and vines there can really annoy one to death. Ignore them. Muir, activate the imprints in your divine eyes and show them to me. Qin Mu did as asked and executed Pleiades' sun star hoops that Yan Jingjing had imparted to him. Star hoops instantly lighted up in his eyes, and the sun that was in the center of the star hoops instantly exploded with dazzling sunlight. The demons that were creating a commotion were frightened into crouching on the ground and not daring to move. Blind was astonished and calculated for a moment. This Ziqing is indeed remarkable. Her divine art is even stronger than mine. However, you only executed the light of her divine eyes, so there's no power at all. Execute it again. Qin Mu executed Pleiades' sun star hoops again, and Blind smiled. That's it. There's a pupil skill, however, the power of the runes was not activated. They are a little interesting, though. If my eyes were still around, I could take another step forward. What a pity. Muir, let me try to merge 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill with these runes, though it might take a few days. After I finish, I'll teach it to you. Qin Mu nodded. Blind memorized the runes in his divine eyes while smiling. Go spend some time with your lovely wives. There's no need to keep following an old geezer like me. I won't go and find Xing'an so you can be at ease. Qin Mu was still worried he would go look for Xing'an for revenge, so there was unease in his heart. Ling Yuxiu shouted at him from afar. The one who herds cows, we are going up the mountain to gather some fruits to prepare as New Year's goods. Are you coming? Go ahead. Blind smiled. Qin Mu could only run over and say to Ling Yuxiu, the fruits on the mountain have become demons, so they will bite. Granny said that there are some fruits on the mountain that had not become demons yet and they can be eaten. It's just that those mermaids don't recognize the difference, Hu Linger said. When they came up the mountain, they saw many fruit trees, but when the fruits heard that they had come up to gather them, they immediately pulled up their roots and ran away, making everyone stare after them blankly. You're stepping on me, a small grass shouted angrily. Where are my brothers? Everyone immediately escaped for their lives while chased by a bunch of grassmen pursuing them relentlessly. After the commotion, they found the fruit garden mentioned by Granny C, where the fruits had not turned into demons. Qin Mu took a bite, and the fruit was very sweet and fragrant. Yan Jingjing, Ling Yuxiu, and Si Yunxiang carried baskets to pluck the fruits, while Hu Linger sat on the branches of the tree to eat. Soon, her tummy bulged, and she laid down with her tails drooping. What a fragrant fruit! Suddenly, a voice spoke, and Qin Mu looked toward it. He saw a youth in white walking out from the mountains while carrying a huge chest. Qin Mu took a couple fruits from a basket and smiled. Where's brother from? Where are you going? The youth gave his thanks and praised the fruits endlessly after he tasted one. There's the flavor of God's blood, so it's truly delicious. I don't have a fixed residence, so I'm usually wandering around. I'm here to meet Divine Physician Qin to ask him for help in curing my illness. Qin Mu blinked and asked, Divine Physician Qin? Cure illness? What illness has brother contracted? The youth let out a sigh and said, terminal illness. Qin Mu's gaze flashed. How can I address brother? The youth buried the fruit in the earth and carefully covered it with dirt. Xing'an, Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 403, Friend from Afar. Xing'an. Qin Mu looked at the youth with a blank look, thinking carefully. He then asked Ling Yuxiu and the rest, have you heard of the name Xing'an? The girls shook their heads and replied, we have not heard of this name. However, the surname Xing is quite rare. Cowherd, ask which Divine Physician Qin is he looking for? We might know who he is, Si Yunxiang said. Qin Mu agreed and said to Xing'an, my junior sister wants me to ask which Divine Physician Qin are you looking for? Xing'an smiled and said, this person is famous. He's the most renowned young physician in the capital, and his name is Qin Mu. He's the heavenly devil cult master, but he also has a reputation as a divine physician. My medicinal expertise isn't ordinary as well, but after treating myself for years, I keep feeling like there is something wrong. The more I treat myself, the more I feel that something is wrong. The body parts have started to reject one another, making it difficult to house them together. Not long ago, I met the Grandmaster of Roland's Golden Palace, who's an old friend of mine, and he recommended a person. He said that Divine Physician Qin has remarkable abilities in the art of healing, so I should go find him. Qin Mu was furious. It's Pan Gong Tso, that wretch again. He keeps giving me problems. Why didn't Imperial Preceptor kill him when he took down Roland's Golden Palace and let him escape in advance instead? So it's Heavenly Devil Cult Master, Qin Mu said with realization in his voice. I've heard of his name. He's pretty extraordinary. Xing'an was smiling. I've heard Heavenly Devil Cult Master had the means to help Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to rebuild flying ships and warships, so he could wipe out the prairie in one go, subduing all the Khans and raising Roland's Golden Palace. He even helped Emperor Yanfeng forge a divine cannon that shot down the god of high heavens, which is truly remarkable. Such a dangerous person, yet I have no choice but to find him, because Jade Face Poison King is even more dangerous than him. He then added after a moment, the cultivation of this Heavenly Devil Cult Master is only of 6 directions realm, after all, so is easy to control. Jade Face Poison King, however, is ruthless and would be much harder to control. That's right, they called you Cowherd. Is that your name? Qin Mu immediately smiled and said, Nope. I'm a person who herded cows. So my senior and junior sisters call me Cowherd Boy. So I see. Xingyan looked around and said, In the battle when the god was slain here, I've heard that heavenly devil cult master had made an appearance, so I came here to look for him. I've eaten your fruits, so I can't leave without giving anything in return. Rise! He stretched out a finger, and the core of the fruit which he had buried in the earth earlier grew rapidly, transforming into a huge tree which bore fruit after a moment. The tree was filled with them. Creation technique! Xianxia hissed under her breath. Xingyan took a look at her and waved his hands. The fruits all dropped on the ground and rolled everywhere. They landed on the ground and grew roots. After a moment, the whole mountain was covered in fruit trees. Flowers bloomed and withered. Green fruits grew quickly and soon ripened on the branches. Try it. See if the taste is similar? Xingyan smiled. Yan Jingjing was about to pluck one fruit to taste it when Qin Mu shook his head. Sister Jing, don't pluck it. It won't be good to eat. Yan Jingjing let go of the fruit and looked at it. She examined it carefully, but saw only that the fruit was bright red, similar to the ones they had plucked. There was nothing special about it. Cowherd is extraordinary. You have seen through it. Xingyan smiled and said, Creation technique can change the process of the plant's growth, and also change the taste of the plant. It can even make the plant poisonous and change its structure, changing the species of the plant. You can even make the plant able to control the actions of others. He raised his hand to pluck a bright red fruit, and it stretched its body to become a little red snake that went to coil around his wrist. The flat head of the snake was raised over his palm, while the forked was outstretched as the snake hissed at the group. Everyone jumped in shock, and a hissing came from all directions. Tens of thousands of fruits hung on the fruit trees that were all around the mountain. At that moment, all of them stretched and turned into small red snakes that were dangling from the trees and staring at them. The creation technique of heavenly devil cult isn't bad, right? Xingyan smiled and said, I learned it from Roland's Golden Palace's Grandmaster. It's a pity that even Grandmaster himself didn't manage to comprehend the essence of it, disappointing me. Heavenly devil cult, however, is an even bigger disappointment, since no one there could actually comprehend the marvel of this technique. However, little girl is not bad, you recognize the technique, and Cult Master Qin is extraordinary as well, able to see how I used it to change the form of the object. You recognized us? Xianxia cried out. Xingyan smiled and said, I didn't recognize you girls. However, Grandmaster had drawn me a portrait of Cult Master Qin, as though he was scared I would be mistaken. Qin Mu looked at the mountain filled with red snakes and his expression changed slightly. He knew the creation techniques in great educational heavenly devil scriptures were extraordinary, and he had used Earth Aeon technique to mature a tree and grow yellow pears. However, the extent to which Xing and had cultivated the creation techniques made them have no hope of catching up. What the young patriarch cultivates is the creation techniques. I wonder if he can achieve such a feat. The corner of Qin Mu's eyes twitched. Even though the young patriarch was very strong, he might not have this kind of ability. Xingyan was simply like a god who could do everything, planting a tree, making the tree bear fruit, then turning it into venomous snakes was the actions of a god. The red snakes swayed their flat triangle heads on top of the trees as though they were dancing to the music. Yet how could all of them move in unison? Xingyan had just said that eating the fruits could make a person lose control over their body, and it turned out it hadn't been just empty talk. The idea was bone-chilling. Qin Mu took in a long and deep breath before saying solemnly, Why does senior brother Xingyan wants to find me? For me to help you. Xingyan sighed and raised his hand to look at it over and over again. Because this body sometimes isn't willing to listen to me and even rejects me. I know there are numerous experts by your side, and I recognize some of those old fellows, for example, Sword God. He poses some threat to me, so even though that threat isn't strong, his abilities are still not weak. Luckily, he's headed for Great Thunderclap Monastery. What a joke! Qin Mu's heart sunk. Xingyan was even harder to deal with than he'd thought. Old Ma was only a distraction, while his main aim was to lure the tigers out of the mountain. He just wanted village chief and the rest to head to Great Thunderclap Monastery. He didn't need old Ma's arms, for he seemed to have already received godlike arms. He had only one goal, and that was Qin Mu. How humorous is that a person can unknowingly shed one's dead skin, switch one's bones, hair, flesh, and blood. In just 7 years, all the organs in the body would undergo a change. Xing had a peculiar gaze, and strange lights came from his pupils. 9 layers of rings appeared in his eyes, which were the 9 heavens, Blind's divine eyes. This means that the you 7 years ago and the you now are 2 completely different people. Has your way of thinking when compared to 7 years ago changed? You think you are still you, but you don't know if you have been influenced secretly during those 7 years and have already changed into another you. Xing smiled. In that case, why can't one take the initiative in the change? To attach other people's body parts to our own body? What's the difference between taking the initiative to change our weaker body parts with the body parts of those from strong practitioners and the change that happens once every 7 years? That's why I tried to change into a god. His divine eyes revealed a fervent look which was filled with fanaticism. I started to research the skill of changing bodies, and I soon had some accomplishments. My master was almost a top-notch existence, so I cut off his head when he let his guard down and replaced it with my own. It was a success. However, my master was too weak and couldn't satisfy me. Thus, I started to look for other experts. Over the years, he placed the huge chest which he'd carried on his back down, and it opened up. Qin Mu, Yan Jingjing, Ling Yuxiu, and the rest all knew what would be in it, but they still couldn't resist looking inside. The faces of the girls instantly turned pale white, and they turned away to puke. Hu Linger, who had hidden herself on the tree and observing, also puked messily. The chest was constructed with Taoye's bone and on the outside was wrapped with a layer of Taoye skin. So the space inside was huge, 300 yards in length and breadth. There were shelves inside it, and all of them were filled with body parts. Just of the arms alone, there were over a dozen. There were also hearts, eyes, bones, legs, and even heads. Other than that, there was also all kinds of blood, human skin, as well as all kinds of scattered organs. There were even quite a few types of hair. Xing looked at his chest with a feverish look. Take a look. How many works of art have I collected? I have treated my body as an art piece that can be rearranged, creating all kinds of me. I even changed my brain before. However, puzzlement entered his expression. I still notice some incompatibility between the body parts. At times they even reject one another, and my medical expertise can no longer solve it. Sword God thinks that my target is Rulai's divine fists, but he didn't know that I don't need them at all. I only need Cult Master Qin, which was why I let slip the news that I was looking for Rulai. He closed the chest and returned it to his back. He then turned around and looked down the mountain with a slight smile. A human body changes once every 7 years, and the way one thinks and feels is also different. So why are you insisting on finding your own divine eyes? Spear God. Qin Mu looked over to that side and saw Blind standing there with a huge black-colored dragon skeleton circling around him while growling in a deep voice. It matters to me, Blind said easily. A friend from far away has come, so even though it's a long distance, I still must kill. Xing, I've been looking for you for a long time. Xing had a smile on his face as he walked down the mountain. Cult Master Qin, wait a moment. Let me meet an old friend. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he threw a glance to Ling Yuxiu and the rest, signaling for them to follow up. He executed secrets of dragon control to awaken the flood dragons. At the same time, Def, who was recuperating in the hall, took in a long breath. He spread out the pieces of white paper around him and raised his brush to start painting. In the hall nearby, Cripple used his hands to push his wheelchair out. In the other hall, Granny C said with a cold and grim face, "Husbands, it's time for you to make a move." Experts walked out of the hall solemnly. Suddenly, a loud and resounding voice rang out. "Minister Qin, I'm here. Where's my precious daughter? Minister Qin, come out now. Off with your head." Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 404. Invincible. Father-in-law is here to kill the son-in-law. Xianxia's face was red from excitement. Cult Master Emperor wants your head off, so you have no choice but to retaliate, gathering the power of our heavenly devil cult to get rid of the emperor and taking his position yourself. Princess Xiao is married to you, so she would become part of your chamber of imperial concubines. You're lovers, but she needs to take revenge for her father's death, and so her heart would be in a struggle. If that wasn't enough, she would also have to defend against the other imperial concubines. There would also be Saint Xiang, which is me, planning to kill Cult Master to become the emperor. Princess Xiao would have to face my evil schemes while protecting you, Cult Master, as she thinks of ways to kill you herself. What true sadomasochism? Ling Yuxiu rolled her eyes at her. Lassie Xiang, you're thinking too much. My father is here for the matters of Chief Yu Zhaoqing. He needs to personally attend the settling of so many people of Heavenly Feather Clan. Besides, Chief Yu is the owner of Heavenly Feather World, so he has to come personally no matter what. He's not here to kill the one who herds cows. Qin Mu's flute sounded out, and flood dragons slithered in front of them. At that moment, a dragon's roar rang out as Dragon Qi ran unhindered across the whole country. Emperor Yanfeng descended from the sky. Emperor Yanfeng's reason for coming wasn't entirely like what Ling Yuxiu had said. He had not come just for Heavenly Feather Clan and Yu Zhaoqing, but also for Ling Yuxiu. Blind had kidnapped her and lured him to Great Thunderclap Monastery, entrapping him in discussing Buddhism with Rulai for a few days before he could break free. Not long after that, Qin Mu had sent a memorial to him. When he received it, he rushed over in a hurry, abandoning the feathered forest guards far behind by him. All of that was just to find Qin Mu for an answer. In his eyes, that youth was truly daring, even snatching his daughter by force. Even though it hadn't been him that had snatched her by force, Ling Yuxiu had left without a word from him, so it was still definitely taking her away without his permission. If that wasn't enough, the old blind man had even stuffed a chicken in his hands and said he was treating his in-law to a feast. It gave him a bad feeling that his cabbage had been ruined by a pig, which hurt his heart. However, when Emperor Yanfeng landed in the manor, he felt that something was slightly wrong. The atmosphere seemed to be wrong. The old blind man who had kidnapped his daughter might have had a short stature, but his aura was extremely towering. Black dragon bones danced around him with cold murderous intent. Meanwhile, in front of the huge hall, female experts stood with overflowing murderous intents, and the corners of Emperor Yanfeng's eyes twitched. Among those women, he also saw his mother, Empress Dowager. After she left the palace, I ordered people to investigate it, but all I learned was that she received news of Jade-Face Poison King and going off to chase after him. Emperor Yanfeng's face turned black, and he thought to himself, how could I let something that would shame the royal family happen? I ordered for news of Jade-Face Poison King to be leaked so as to lure out the lovers of Jade-Face Poison King to go after him together. I planned to use their hand to force Empress Dowager back, so why does it seem like she made peace with those old loggerheads? Is she planning on staying here with them? He wanted to cry, but had no tears. The women of Ling family were fearless, unlike the pretty daughters in other humble families. They dared to chase after their own happiness. However, family shame could not be spread abroad. The emperor's face had to be preserved. Emperor Yanfeng then noticed Granny C, and his mind blanked out. His throat grew parched, and the 3,000 beauties of his chamber of concubines paled in his eyes. When Qin Mu had saved him from the hands of old Dao Master and old Rulai, he had once settled here. He had recollection of the place, but he had never seen his caretaker's true appearance before. Granny C had always used a pole to bring the meal to him in a basket. When Emperor Yanfeng saw Granny C's true appearance, he was stunned and got distracted. Your Majesty, do you still want your empire? That's Cult Master Li. Qin Mu said loudly. Emperor Yanfeng suppressed the astonishment and pulled away his gaze, not daring to look anymore. Granny C chuckled. Rascal, spoiling my plans. Otherwise, this empire would be our heavenly saint cults already. Emperor, are your injuries healed? Has your cultivation returned to its peak? If it's not back, you are going to be a goner. Emperor Yanfeng's gaze moved around and landed on Yu Zhaoqing. He saw that she looked like she was from a foreign territory, so he thought to himself, is she Heavenly Feather Chief that Minister Qin mentioned? Her cultivation is extremely strong. So who is she guarding against? Just as he thought that, he saw Cripple who was sitting on a wheelchair, Deaf who was swinging his brush rapidly, and his gaze then inadvertently turned to the youth who was coming down the mountain. Emperor Yanfeng's heart trembled violently when he looked at the young man carrying the chest. That youth didn't look old, but he gave off an extremely powerful presence, one that was even stronger than that of the gods of high heavens. I should have brought sunshot divine cannon. Emperor Yanfeng gritted his teeth. His divine treasures had been too severely injured, so his cultivation hadn't yet completely recovered. However, Qin Mu had gathered all the algebra experts in the world and set up Divine Bridge's space algebra model, which allowed him to figure out many tricks to repair his divine treasures. His cultivation had recovered up to 90%, and he was back to being one of the top experts in the world. However, when faced with the youth, he had a feeling that he was a dragon held by his weak spot and about to have his skin stripped off. That person was extremely dangerous, much more so than Old Dao Master and Old Rulai together. Emperor's cultivation isn't bad. Xing looked over and greeted him. Wanderer of the wild Xing and pays his respect to his majesty. Your majesty's magic power has already reached the level of God, and your divine treasures have been ruined before being molded back together, so they're stronger than other people's divine treasures. They're worthy of my collection. His eyes were blind's eyes, and they seemed to have a kind of peculiar magic that could see through everything about everyone. One look at Emperor Yanfeng, and he knew his divine treasures had been destroyed and rebuilt, giving them a stability that was unmatched. This filled him with delight at seeing a prey. Emperor Yanfeng felt as if he'd been marked by a predator, and his heart tightened. Xing then looked at Blind, and astonishment appeared on his face. He praised, Dao Friend's mind is actually so powerful. Since you had your eyes dug out, you chose to walk another path and reached the peak of another kind of divine eyes. Are they of the mind? Using your primordial spirit in place of your divine eyes. Mind eyes are unmatched in this world. I like your primordial spirit very much. Blind gave a cold snort. Xing then looked at Yu Zhaoqing and his eyes lit up. Your skin isn't bad. I'll need to set up another shelf in my chest to place your skin. His gaze then landed on Cripple who was on the wheelchair. He then moved his gaze away from Cripple's body, which made the latter furious. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Old fart, return me my legs. Xing ignored him, his gaze coming to rest on Deaf who was painting in the hall nearby. There are boundless mountains and rivers, multitudinous ravines, gods, immortals, ghosts, and monsters in your brain, and only because of that you draw the boundless worlds. I like your brain. Deaf stopped and looked at him. Xing's gaze moved past the bodies of the women, not paying them any attention. The women who were chasing Apothecary may have been strong practitioners who were reputable in the martial world, some being even on the cult master level, but most of them didn't reach a degree that would attract Xing's attention. Finally, his gaze landed on Granny C, and astonishment appeared on his face once more. He wasn't smitten by Granny C's beauty and just muttered, How could a mortal actually have such beauty? This body, I want it too. You are late, Li Tianxing sneered. Xing, this body is mine. Is that cult master Li? Xing smirked and said leisurely, I've seen you before. You were a remarkable talent and full of ambition, so what had changed you to what you are now? That's right. It's this divine beauty that made you lose yourself. You planted your primordial spirit in the Tao heart of this body, wanting to take it over, to become the owner. However, this work of art has caught my eye, so you can only move aside. Li Tianxing smiled flirtatiously, in a way that even girls would fall head over heels, but Xing remained unmoved. He looked around and said in delight, I had only come to find divine physician Qin to treat my injury, so I hadn't expected to meet so many works of art worth collecting. I'm truly fortunate. Everyone. He greeted everyone, unable to contain his joy. Thank you, everyone. Cripple couldn't hold it in any longer. He rolled his wheelchair forward and shouted, I may be the divine legs, but I'm also the divine hands. Heavenly pilfering sun switching technique is not only a leg technique. Whoosh! The wheelchair flew up and Cripple's hands had countless changes, dazzling everyone's eyes. Heaven pilfering sun switching technique was separated into heaven pilfering divine legs and sun switching divine hands. The reason why Cripple could be known as God Thief was because the skill of his hands was also extremely terrifying, able to ignore all seals and restrictions, pilfering heaven and switching the sun. Bang! The wheelchair shattered, and Cripple flew backward. He crashed into the hall and lay on the ground, unable to get up. Divine hands, you are still slightly lacking. Xingyan laughed out and turned around. A dragon roar rang out, and his palm clasped around the tip of Blind's spear. It was Divine Spear Long Tuo, which was made of black dragon's bones. The spear came forward like a dragon and roared. Blind's footsteps were agile, and his weapon was like an illusion, stabbing towards Xing and like countless black dragons. Blind's attainments in spear skills alone were already at the peak. He had closed in on Dragon Rearing Sovereign before the other could notice anything, ending the battle in an instant. Even though he didn't have his eyes, Mind Divine Eyes were even more powerful than Divine Eyes, so he could see through the flaws in all moves. Long Tuo moved as he willed, and its attacks were unmatched. However, he had met an even more terrifying existence. Xingyan's eyes were his eyes, and they were only slightly inferior to Mind Divine Eyes. On top of that, Xingyan's magic power was like that of God, so every blow he received caused Long Tuo to tremble non-stop. Blind's small stature was also trembling continuously as he moved back to shake off the power, his hands turning numb. Ha! Blind's eyebrows drew together, and Black Tortoise Primordial Spirit appeared behind him. He used all his strength and moved together with Empress Dowager and all the other women that had come rushing forward. In an instant, all kinds of lights burst forth in the manner as broad and powerful divine arts surged forth. Boom! An astonished cry sounded out as Empress Dowager and numerous women puked blood while flying backward. Xingyan smiled and said, "You guys don't even make me want to collect you, so there's no need for you to come to disgrace yourselves. You hit my mother? Off with your head." Mong! Emperor Yanfeng's body trembled, and vital qi burst forth. His divine treasures rumbled as they opened, and the roars of dragons and howls of tigers came from them. He stretched out his hand, and 9 dragons' divine fire descended from the sky. Xingyan smirked, and the top of his head suddenly opened up. It flew off like a huge golden alms bowl. The 9 dragons' divine fire was caught by it before it returned to his head. Emperor Yanfeng was astonished, but right after, the heavenly dragons that coiled around him attacked in close quarters as he worked together with Blind against Xingyan. At the same time, Def's huge brush was like a beam which he flicked with strength. The painting he had just finished flew out from the hall. Wielding his brush, Def leaped up as though he was soaring. He suddenly sank down and entered a painting, his brush stabbing out from within to smear on Xingyan's body, and the other couldn't help falling inside. Paintings were erected in the air and fluttered around. There were tens of thousands of gods and devils within them that encircled and attacked Xingyan. He moved through the paintings and killed all of them, turning them into pools of ink. Suddenly, Def jumped out, and his huge brush smeared toward all of his paintings. Loud world-shaking bangs rang out as the inner space of the painting collapsed and shrunk before exploding with terrifying power. Def let out a sigh of relief when a palm rushed out from the center of the explosion, tapping the pit of his stomach. Blind hurriedly tossed out Long Tuo, which transformed into a black dragon. The strength of both men exploded, and Def flew backward while puking blood. He climbed to his feet from where he'd landed and spat out another mouthful of blood. His limbs went weak, and he sprawled out on the ground while hissing. His magic power and corporeal body are too strong. I can't injure him. However, he's trapped in my painting now, so quickly. I can't trap him for much longer. Emperor Yanfeng rushed to the center of the explosion, and the dragons went for Xingyan. At the same time, Blind's black spear Long Tuo also stabbed continuously, moving as quick as lightning, but not injuring Emperor Yanfeng. Every strike was aimed precisely at Xing. "It's my turn." Li Tianxing gave a long hiss and flew over. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 405, Invulnerable. Li Tianxing's clothes fluttered. As the previous cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, her abilities were definitely top-notch, despite the slight change in the sex. The moment she moved, she exhibited extremely powerful battle prowess. Granny C's figure floated around, but whenever she landed, every step seemed to be extremely heavy. She had flawlessly merged heavy and light together. Li Tianxing stretched out her hand, and the space seemed to collapse as it fell to her hand. The surrounding space treated the palm as the center of the circle and densely packed, thread-like veins lines formed. Every node of those thread-like vein lines represented a star. Several dozen stars formed a constellation, and the 360 stars of all sizes formed a space and network of overarching heaven. It was great overarching heavenly stars palm force. If one looked in detail at the stars and constellations, one would notice that they formed different kinds of images. For example, the inner structure of Purple Star was a heavenly palace, since it represented royalty. The 7 mansions of the west sky had over 700 stars and 54 constellations, creating all kinds of images inside, like Wood Wolf of Kuei, Metal Dog of Lu, and Pheasant of Wei. The power represented by each star was also different from one another. Li Tianxing was the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult and had received the teachings of Woodcutter, so she had also comprehended her own unity technique. If she hadn't become perverted, her talent and learning would have been top-notch in the world. Great overarching heavenly stars palm force was the ultimate art that she had comprehended after mastering great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures, and it was extremely powerful. Granny C attacked toward the center of the explosion and fought together with Emperor Yanfeng. Instantly, a violent pulse came from the epicenter which bombarded the surroundings, causing an unknown number of monsters in the manor to puke blood from the tremors. They all hurriedly hid in the hall to avoid the impact. Halfway up the mountain, Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu had flood dragons standing in front of them to block the aftermath of the divine arts. Qin Mu placed his hand on Carefree Sword, and the heavens in his eyes opened up as he stared closely at the battle in the manor. His fingers were continuously tapping on the sword's hilt and all kinds of wuji, taiji. For symbols and 8 diagrams runes appeared in front and behind him as he frantically calculated. In the center of the explosion, the world in the painting that had collapsed slowly faded away. Emperor Yanfeng and Li Tianxing surrounded the place where it had been, attacking while sprinting around. The black spear in Blind's hand, in the meantime, had become longer and longer. With a jolt of it, his feet also moved continuously as he stabbed at the painting. From within it, arms and legs attacked outwards to clash with the 3 experts, and they were not at no disadvantage. Emperor Yanfeng's magic power was incomparably powerful. Even though his cultivation had yet to recover to its peak, his level of magic power could already make him stand above the whole world. It even surpassed that of Li Tianxing and Blind, with his moves being grand in scale and filled with strength while his blows were heavy, fierce, and overbearing. Li Tianxing, on the other hand, was a notch higher in divine arts. Her unity technique may not have been the true teaching, but by uniting great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures, she could execute all kinds of techniques, skills, and divine arts freely. On top of that, Qin Mu even saw something that he didn't possess. It was the more profound divine art contained in great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. However, it required the combination of all kinds of divine arts from great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. For example, Li Tianxing's great overarching Heavenly Stars palm force combined over 300 divine arts in a palm, and because of that had shocking power. Cult Master Li is no doubt a genius of our cult, but it's a pity that his thoughts have gone crooked. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration endlessly. There was naturally no need to talk about Blind. The battle with Dragon Rearing Sovereign had already shown his power. However, Blind's performance now was even more powerful than the time he had fought Dragon Rearing Sovereign. His divine spear became longer and longer, but the power also became greater and greater. Any strike from him gave others a feeling that it was absolutely wonderful. His most outstanding point, however, still lay in the fact that he could make up for the places where Li Tianxing and Emperor Yanfeng were lacking, saving them with his attacks. He was the two's backup, allowing them to execute their moves as they will, not having to worry about themselves. Even so, the three of them were gradually unable to hold back Xing and who was in the painting. That painting floated to and fro. Not only could the fist and leg divine arts from within block their attacks, they could even retaliate. The power of Xing and's divine arts was incomparably strong, and his magic power was also powerful. His corporeal body was even more ridiculous, causing blood to leak out from the mouths of the three opponents. Even the painting itself was continuously splitting open from the tremors. He was about to escape. Qin Mu frowned slightly as he saw the disadvantageous situation. He then shouted out, "Chief Yu!" Yu Zhaoqing rushed out with a quick step, her feet moving as though she was flying. She put her two fingers together as she stabbed toward the painting. Swoosh! Her speed was extremely fast as she moved like flickering lights and passing shadows. Light flashed at the tip of her fingers, and it was like a sharp sword stabbing into the painting at a lightning-fast speed. Yu Zhaoqing succeeded in her strike and instantly felt an extremely powerful force countering from the painting, making her delicate body tremble before falling back. Suddenly, the wings on Yu Zhaoqing's body opened up to raise her up. She paused in the sky, her dozens of wings flapping in a hurry. Countless runes appeared on the clothes of her body, and light circulated rapidly, shooting out from her scales and into the painting. A trace of blood could be seen from within, which roused Emperor Yanfeng and Li Tianxing's spirits, causing their attacks to be even more concentrated. Qin Mu had a nervous expression when he said to the girls behind him in a low voice, "Take this chance to hide in the hall." Ling Yuxiu hurriedly brought Yan Jingjing and the rest down the mountain and hid in one of the halls. Qin Mu then frowned slightly. The calculations that were both in front and behind him were still progressing frantically, but he soon felt that his wisdom was not enough. He could no longer calculate what were the odds of blind and the resting achieving victory. His feet moved as he calculated the angle and success rate of his attack. With the execution of secrets of dragon control, the flood dragons coiled around his body and lent him their magic power. Qin Mu's aura rose dramatically, and as the flood dragons lent their power to him, his body grew taller and taller. His magic power grew more and more powerful while dragon scales were also frantically growing out of his outer body, covering his skin. Clink, clink, clink. More 9 heavens formation markings appeared in his pupils. He had executed 9 heavens eyes awakening technique to its extreme. Not only was he using superior algebra attainments to calculate, he was also using his divine eyes to observe the battle and calculate. Xing and has a flaw. His body parts aren't adapting well and are starting to reject one another. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his mental strength burst forth to contact Yu Zhaoqing with his mind. She then immediately used her brainwaves to inform Blind, Li Tianxing, and Emperor Yanfeng. At the halfway point of the mountain, Qin Mu stopped and bent his knees to squat down. The flood dragons on his body raged with magic power, causing his aura to suddenly become berserk as well. Qin Mu's palm that was holding Carefree Sword's hilt moved, and sword light filled the heaven. The strength in his legs burst forth, and he nearly replicated Cripple's speed when he was at his peak. Boom! Wherever Qin Mu passed by, there would be hundreds and thousands of afterimages overlapping each other, moving forward continuously toward the painting. He reached it the moment when the sword light of Carefree Sword was the most scorching. His speed reached its extreme, and the sword light of Carefree Sword was like a huge drill flashing by, piercing through the painting. Xingyan's chest was struck by the sword, and he got stabbed out through the painting, which was then shredded to pieces. At the same time, Blind's attack arrived. Black Dragon Spear Long Tuo pierced Xingyan's back and came out from his chest, avoiding his heart. Emperor Yanfeng and Li Tianxing used 9 Dragon Mountain Breaking Palm and Great Overarching Heavenly Stars Palm Force to strike at the same time against Xingyan's left and right temples, causing massive destructive force to rush into his brain. At the same instant, the lights flowing through Yu Zhaoqing's body flew out to stab Xingyan's legs, fixing his feet to the ground. Has it ended? Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Yu Zhaoqing played the most important part in this battle. With her as the central administration, Li Tianxing, Emperor Yanfeng, and Blind could work together as one. Only then were they able to suddenly unleash their most ruthless moves, killing Xing and in one strike. You guys aren't bad. Xing En, who got hit by the sword and spear, suddenly raised his face full of praise. Blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth and various wounds, but it was only for a moment. As if it was alive, it is suddenly rushed back in, returning to his body. You guys are all not bad. Xing En laughed loudly, and Qin Mu's face changed drastically. He hurriedly pulled out his sword, but at that moment, Xing En stretched out his hand to flick him away. Qin Mu's body trembled violently, and the flood dragons cried out mournfully as they fell off him. His strength instantly declined. Blind shook his spear and flicked Xing En up into the air, saving Qin Mu. Xing En stretched his hand out to smack Divine Spear Long Tuo heavily, and sparks instantly flew around Blind's hands. The flesh and blood of his palms were all messed by the friction with Divine Spear Long Tuo, which came smashing back at him. Once Divine Spear Long Tuo saw that it was about to stab him in the chest, it changed back into a black bone dragon to coil around him, trembling violently to shake off Xing En's power. Divine Spear Long Tuo's bones rumbled with dragon roars. Only then was it able to shake off the power. The black bone dragon raised its head and coiled even tighter around Blind. Xing En fell to the ground with a thump. There were 2 huge holes in his chest which were caused by Qin Mu's sword and Blind's spear. His head was nearly squashed due to Li Tianxing and Emperor Yanfeng's palm divine arts. Meanwhile, there were over a dozen holes on his legs from Yu Zhaoqing's attack. You guys are really not bad. Xing En's face was long and narrow from being squashed, and his face was warped. However, he was still smiling with sincerity. You guys are worthy of me using my full strength. Kacha. The chest he always carried with him split open, and 3 heads flew out. Xing En raised his hands to pluck away his own that had been squashed, and the 3 new ones landed on his neck, each giving a shake. The eyeballs in the squashed head then flew out to replace the eyeballs in one of the heads. 4 more arms then flew out of the chest and came to his sides, growing into his body. Xing En moved them and stretched out one hand to pull out the divine heart that had been pierced, replacing it with another one. He then pulled out the ribs that had been sliced apart and shook his head. Even if I kill all of you, I can only be said to not be making a loss. All of you aren't bad, worthy to be part of my collection. Blind's expression changed as he stretched his hands to grab the air. Long Tuo flew into his hand and transformed back into a black spear. He shouted sternly, "We can't wait for him to finish changing his body." The huge spear in his hand stabbed forward. Emperor Yanfeng and Li Tianxing immediately went left and right to attack. Yu Zhaoqing also used all she could, but Xing En remained calm and composed as before, using 2 hands to continue changing his damaged body. Bang! Emperor Yanfeng suffered numerous punches and flew backward. The tip of Blind's divine spear Long Tuo was grabbed by Xing En's other hand, which gave a forceful jolt to flick Blind high up into the sky. 2 heads opened wide to howl loudly. Their voices like thunder struck Yu Zhaoqing, who was in midair, causing blood to leak out from the corner of her mouth. She lost control of her consciousness and fell from the sky. Ling Tianxing's palm force burst forth, but what she saw next was Xing En finishing to replace his body parts, facing her with his 3 heads and 6 arms. How am I going to fight like this? Her mind was blank. Cult Master Li, you've planted a devil in the Tao heart? Xing En's 3 faces revealed peculiar smiles. Each face looked different, having a mixture of man and woman, young and old. It's easy to break. After you die, I shall preserve this body carefully. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 406. Great Educational. Li Tianxing's expression changed slightly, and great overarching heavenly star's palm force instantly changed. Her attainments in spell divine arts could be said to be number 1 in the world. The nodes of great overarching heavenly star's palm force were stars, and when they revolved, the attributes of the palm force would change and its power would also become different. Her palm force may seem like corporeal body divine art, but at the root it was a spell divine art. It had inner space, myriad of changes, and was close to boundless. As a matter of fact, after Li Tianqing had succeeded in cultivating great overarching heavenly stars palm force, she had lost her motivation to improve. That kind of divine art was too perfect, so perfect that all the other divine arts created after that couldn't surpass it. Great educational heavenly devil scriptures had unity technique, and she called great overarching heavenly stars palm force her unity technique that was able to control all divine arts in great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Yet no matter how many times her palm force transformed, Xing'an paid no attention to it. He didn't even try to guess the transformations of her palm force or divine arts. No matter how many times her divine arts changed, Xing'an broke them apart with brute force. God's fist, God's strength, God's magic power. He was a god that disregarded all her changes and just crushed everything in his way. Blood leaked out from the corner of Li Tianqing's mouth, and she felt a terrifying force coming out from Xing'an's palm force. That power bombarded her vital qi and struck the devil seed. Village chief and blind couldn't do anything back in the day to save Ciyu. Old Rulai also didn't manage to enlighten Li Tianqing. Yet Xing'an went straight for the origin, wanting to destroy him. Emperor Yanfeng and blind attacked. Yu Zhaoqing also picked herself up and rose to fight. Four of Xing'an's hands dealt with Emperor Yanfeng and blind's attacks while vital qi rose from the top of his head to transform into a divine bridge. His primordial spirit stood on it and fought with Yu Zhaoqing, blocking the moves of the three people and even severely injuring them. Too terrifying. Emperor Yanfeng couldn't get through the 3 heads and 6 arms. Blind had the ability to break through Xing'an's defense, but the other's power was just too strong. His magic power far surpassed that of blind, which made his attacks have not lethality. The battle between Yu Zhaoqing and Xing'an on the divine bridge was filled with danger. Xing'an's primordial spirit was extremely weird and terrifying. It was changing non-stop, sometimes becoming green dragon god, sometimes white tiger god, and at others black tortoise or vermilion bird. He had even seized the primordial spirits of experts who had cultivated them to the god realm. Invulnerable, invulnerable. Blood kept flowing out from Li Tianqing's mouth, and the devil seed was gradually shaken. Yet before that happened, the corporeal body might not be able to handle it. After all, the body belonged to the disciple Ciyu. Li Tianqing had changed her primordial spirit into a heart devil, planting the devil in her Tao heart. She then had borrowed Ciyu's body to continuously nourish herself and become stronger. Only recently did she try to fuse and take over the body. Because of that, Ciyu's cultivation had risen drastically, breaking through life and death a year ago and the divine bridge just recently. Yet Ciyu's primordial spirit couldn't withstand Xing'an's attacks. Before Li Tianqing's devil seed was killed, Ciyu would probably die in Xing'an's hands. Once Yu is dead, this body will belong to me. I can escape. Xing'an can't hold me back. Li Tianqing was overjoyed. She had always fought over the flawless body with Ciyu, yet there was always blind village chief, and also old Rulai who got in the way, and now she would finally get her wish. What she loved wasn't Ciyu as a person, but her body. How good was it to be a woman with a beauty that even the gods would envy? So beautiful that one looks out of this world? With such a body, Li Tianqing would attract the eyes of everyone no matter where she walked. Countless men would fall head over heels for her and go into a frenzy for her. Everyone would love her. She could have everything. Since she was the previous heavenly devil cult master, her abilities weren't just for great battle prowess. If she wanted to escape, not many people in the world could be able to stop her. The cult followers of heavenly devil cult were skilled in all kinds of escape skills, and she was even a great master in this field. Now, she just needed to wait for Xing and to get rid of Ciyu's primordial spirit, and she would be able to escape to live a happy and blessed life. Yet Li Tianqing's heart suddenly became flustered for no reason. He thought of a bright and beautiful morning 100 years ago when the young patriarch had brought a little girl of Ci family to find him. This is Ciyu, the heavenly saint cult saintess of this generation, but I can't teach her. Compared to me, you are still young and robust, so you can handle the torment. The young patriarch had thrown the little girl over and turned to leave. He escaped as though the little girl was an extremely dangerous beast. Back then, when Li Tianxing saw Si Yuyu's face, he had still been a man. At that time, Si Yuyu was only 13 years old, and he could still remember their first meeting. He'd felt a blow to his heart as though he was struck by the greatest happiness. It was like his heart was held by her warm hands, like the whole world was only left with that young girl in front of him. Yet he knew he was her master and he couldn't have any evil thoughts toward his disciple. For a long time, he always abided by a master's responsibility, teaching Si Yuyu with all his heart, imparting all he had learned to her. Yet evil thoughts still kept climbing out from time to time, disrupting his thoughts and Tao heart. Si Yuyu was very mischievous and basically, all the people in Heavenly Saint cult had been tormented by her, which resulted in a lot of trouble. Li Tianxing was always busy cleaning up the mess left by his young disciple, settling all the troubles caused by her. However, that time was also when he'd been the happiest. Even though he was always busy cleaning up after her, he also got to enjoy spoiling her. In front of him, Si Yuyu was obedient and understanding. She improved very fast and was much to his liking. There were no dumb women in Si family. Back then, they had a very strong relationship as master and disciple, and he had gotten used to hiding the evil thoughts deep inside him. When did he start to change? Si Yuyu had grown up. Her mischievous and puerile character gradually vanished, and what replaced it was an astonishing charm. Every action, every word radiated with charm, to the point that he could only have eyes for her. At that time, he had known that he was the master and shouldn't have evil thoughts toward his disciple, but he couldn't resist it any longer. He peeked on Si Yuyu bathing, collected clothes she had worn. He was infatuated with her to the extreme. However, he was detected by Si Yuyu, and she started to slowly drift away. It should have been around then that his infatuation had become twisted, changed into greed. The more he couldn't get it, the more he wanted to get it, and the more the thought, the more his heart became twisted. He felt that what he loved wasn't his disciple, but that most beautiful body. He felt his own change, and he couldn't help being frightened. The collapse, distortion, and deformation of his Tao heart terrified him. To save it, he had come up with a solution. Since there was a rule which forbade master and disciple relationships, which limited the feelings between him and his disciple, he could become Si Yuyu and live with that beautiful body. He decided to use his power and prestige to settle all of it. All those who opposed him in the cult were exiled or killed or imprisoned. Finally, he had his wish and divorced his first wife to marry his disciple. That night, Si Yuyu fought vigorously to kill him, but that was within his expectations. He became a heart devil which lay low in her Tao heart, waiting for the day he could become her. Li Tianxing recalled all of that, and his eyes grew blank. I've lost. Since that bright and beautiful morning when I saw her for the first time, my Tao heart has been defeated. Li Tianxing coughed up blood from Xing An's heavy attacks and moved back continuously. That morning when the young patriarch had sent Si Yuyu over, at that first look, he had already fallen in love with his disciple. What had crumbled his Tao heart wasn't Si Yuyu, but him himself. Because of the infatuation and the forbidden relationship between master and disciple, his Tao heart was twisted continuously, until it finally became what it was today, a joke in the eyes of others. He didn't really want to attain her body, but had loved the person from the beginning to the end. It wasn't her body. It was only his twisted Tao heart which made him think that he had wanted to become Si Yuyu. When I first met her, I was defeated. Patriarch, you harmed me. Li Tianxing roused his spirit and remembered what else the young patriarch had said during the morning he had sent Si Yuyu over. Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures contains the two words Great Educational, and they mean education, inheritance. As the sacred cult master, don't fail to live up to those two words. At that time, there had been only the girl in his eyes, and that sentence had passed by his ears. However, it had become abnormally clear now. The two words, Great Educational, I have never followed them before. Li Tianxing hissed fiercely, and a terrifying devil light burst forth from Si Yuyu's body, shooting out from her heart and stabbing Xing An's heart. That black light was like a bridge for Li Tianxing's primordial spirit to rush at Xing En. My good disciple, go. He entered Xing En's Tao heart, and he actually felt at peace, like he had never felt before. Granny C woke up and was stumped for words. Yu Zhaoqing fell from the sky while coughing blood. Blind's divine spear Long Tuo was bent, and his arm was broken. Emperor Yanfeng was raised up high by Xing En before being thrown head first into the ground. Empress Dowager and the rest were currently standing up with shaky legs. Cripple tried to crawl up with his hands. Blood flowed out from the corner of Def's mouth while he held his brush with trembling hands, unable to control it at all. Qin Mu was refining spirit pills frantically, treating the injuries of the injured flood dragons. Everyone had lost. They had suffered a crushing defeat. Xing En's palm came at Granny C, wanting to destroy her primordial spirit. Suddenly, that palm stopped in front of her face and became somewhat gentle as it smoothed out her beautiful hair that was messed up at her temples. One head of Xing En lowered to look at her with a gentle gaze as though it was the morning 100 years ago. Yu, be a beautiful woman and live your life happily. Quickly go, Li Tianxing's voice said from Xing En's head. He then shouted sternly, Xing En, follow me to death. Heavenly Devil Disintegration. Cult Master Li, you are too presumptuous. Just a mere devil seed and you want to take over my corporeal body. Fierce shouts came from the other two heads of Xing En. There was a rumble, and a violent explosion came from Xing En's body. It trembled, the limbs going out of control. Cripple forcibly pushed himself to fly out of the hall, his hands coming for Xing En's eyes. Yu Zhaoqing exploded with the last of her strength, and multicolored rays held Xing En's body in place. Blind raised his spear with one arm and used all his strength to stab into Xing En's heart. Emperor Yanfeng snarled and soared into the air while being upside down. He lured over bolts of lightning that were as thick as dragons to strike his opponent frantically. A bunch of trash. Xing En's body suddenly broke down, and heads, arms, a chest, a heart, and legs came flying out from his chest. All of the heads were fuming with anger. You are all a bunch of trash. So what if you used Heavenly Devil Disintegration? What can you do to me? Everyone flew off in all directions and coughed up blood without stopping. Qin Mu jumped up and flew over while the flood dragons chased after him frantically to coil around his body, raising his aura drastically. He raised his sword to stab at Xing En, who was reassembling his body. Get lost! Xing En's arms fell off his body and tapped over a dozen times in a split second, severely injuring the flood dragons once more. They collapsed to the ground, unable to get up anymore. Xing En pulled back his arms and continued to reattach new ones to his body. He flicked Qin Mu away with a finger and said coldly, If it wasn't because you are still of use to me, I could blow you to death with just a breath. The arm he had just connected suddenly fell off his armpit and dropped to the ground. Xing En was stunned. He looked down at that arm, and one of his eyes suddenly dropped out from its eye socket, rolling 2 rounds on the ground. What's happening? He couldn't help being stumped. An ear slid off then, but just as he was about to catch it, his arm also suddenly fell off his body. He raised his head to look at Qin Mu in a hurry, but that head came tumbling down. He shouted over from the ground, You poisoned me? Qin Mu climbed up and wiped away the blood on the corner of his mouth while saying ruthlessly, I just refined a supplement for you, and it worked perfectly. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 407. Xing En's chest. Supplement. Xing En was slightly stunned. His chest suddenly exploded open as ribs came out from his flesh and blood. The latter seemed to be rejecting his ribs, and it looked extremely scary. The divine blood in his body was also flowing outwards. After that, a leg suddenly left the body without his control. What you gave me was really supplement, not poison. Xing En's face finally became flustered when another head fell off. The eyeballs, ears, and nose all slid off. The scattered eyeballs, nose, and tongue bounced around, trying to stick themselves back on the head. But once they managed that, they would fall off again. They couldn't join one another. Emperor Yanfeng, blind, and the rest saw a ray of hope and immediately attacked. Xianxia raised his hand to grab divine spear Long Tuo that blind stabbed toward him. Just as he took hold of it, his whole arm went flying with the spear. He blocked the fist of Emperor Yanfeng, and his backbone suddenly slid out from his body. It wasn't his as well, but had come from a divine skeleton. It cannot be a supplement. It cannot be a supplement. Xianxia was flustered. Granny C suddenly smacked him in the chest with her palm, and what she used was Li Tianxing's great overarching heavenly star's palm force which penetrated his chest. His heart jumped out and landed on the ground, bouncing twice. How can it be a supplement? Xianxia was still not yet dead. He used all his strength to defend against the attacks of everyone, growing more and more terrified. Supplements could only make him even stronger, so why would it make his body split up? Bang, bang, bang. His body suddenly exploded, and blood spilled out in all directions. It had come from another expert and wasn't from the same body as his heart and body, so it was rejecting all parts of the body. What poison did you give me? Xianxia's head, which had landed on the ground, flew up again and pounced over. Qin Mu wasn't in time to dodge it, but at that moment, Cripple's hand moved at lightning-fast speed, and he sprinted over. He suddenly leaped up and grabbed the head while shouting, "Return my legs!" That head roared loudly, blowing Cripple away. However, he came flying back and fought with the head again. A leg sprinted on the ground, rushing toward Qin Mu. Def tossed out the brush in his hand with force, and it swept past Qin Mu, taking that leg into a painting. Def collapsed on his back and gasped for breath. He had used up all his strength to draw a painting, fierce tiger painting. Within it, a fierce tiger was holding that leg in its mouth and running away. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. What he gave Xianxia was indeed a supplement, a true medicine. Wanting to use poison against Xianxia was nearly impossible. It was hard to say if even apothecary had the ability to do it. It was clear then that it was impossible for Qin Mu to refine such a wonderful poison. Xianxia had beat up blind, deaf, cripple, Li Tianxing, and Emperor Yanfeng. All these unmatched existences, to the point they had no means of retaliation. Empress Dowager and the rest of the experts hadn't even lasted a round before falling. Xianxia was definitely numerous times stronger than Dragon-Rearing Sovereign. Qin Mu had used his 3-break powder to poison Dragon-Rearing Sovereign, yet that had only troubled him without posing any threat to his life. So poisoning Xianxia wasn't the best thing to do. Besides that, Xianxia was also skilled in medicine. His attainments in the art of healing could be matched by few in this world, so it would be easy for him to see through it if Qin Mu used poison. To a divine physician that pursues a certain goal, poisoning an opponent was a kind of art. One that did not necessarily require the use of poison. Xianxia was unbelievably strong, but his flaws were also easy to see. His body parts were all taken from other strong practitioners and weren't one with his original body. Thus, they would easily reject one another. Apothecary had once taught Qin Mu that the human body had a self-defense system, immune system. When transplanting organs, it was easy for the original body to recognize foreign ones as invaders that needed to be eradicated. This was the reason why Xianxia's body parts started to reject one another. Apothecary had also taught Qin Mu that most diseases came from the deterioration of the self-defense system. For example, a flu epidemic could be eradicated by strengthening one's constitution and self-defense system. With these 2 points, Qin Mu came up with a method to deal with Xianxia, and it was by refining a great supplement. It would strengthen the sense of rejection between all his body parts, raising it to its maximum. As the only youth in disabled elderly village, Qin Mu had gone through the strictest teachings ever since he was young and had been devastated by the 9 elders of disabled elderly village. The so-called strict family had made him deeply ingrain all their teachings and good traditions in his heart, which then became his personal standard of conduct. Apothecary had noble character and unquestionable integrity. He felt that being an apothecary was an art. There was no fixed boundary between supplement and poison. Poison could be used as a medicine to save lives, while supplement could also be a lethal poison. When Qin Mu had refined pills to cure the flood dragons, what he refined was that great supplement. With the dragon cheilant's saliva as a base ingredient, its potency was increased by all kinds of medicine for the flood dragons to consume. After they ate the spirit pills, their wounds recovered rapidly, and their muscles regenerated. Their broken bones and snapped tendons also grew back quickly. Qin Mu used secrets of dragon control to bring the flood dragons to attack, and when Xing'an's arms attacked came for them, the incomparably strong supplement took the chance to enter Xing'an's arms. It then went into his heart, and from there into all other parts of his body. Qin Mu had created the strongest dose which could even recover the body of injured flood dragons. When the supplement entered Xing'an's body, the medicinal energy came into effect and amplified the rejection of his immune system countless times. Poisoning him wouldn't be a lethal attack, but supplementing him could make him break up into pieces. This was then the art of healing that apothecary had imparted to Qin Mu. Yu Zhaoqing, Empress Dowager, and the rest suppressed their injuries to come to fight once more. Since Xing'an's body had been split into pieces, the heads on the ground flew up and shouted, "Trying to kill me like this? You guys are too naive." His scattered body suddenly landed fatal blows on everyone, but because there was no support of the corporeal body, his magic power was way inferior to what he possessed before. His divine treasures were also seized by others, and even his divine treasures had separated from his body, causing his magic power to be scattered. Any attack he made didn't have the power it had previously. Even so, his abilities were still extremely strong. Furthermore, the heads, legs, arms, and eyeballs floating around made everyone's hair stand on end. Suddenly, a few legs sprinted over and attached themselves to the bottom of Xing'an's chest. Their legs exerted strength and raised him into the sky. "He's trying to escape." Cripple used his hands as feet to sprint over at a flying speed, shouting as he grabbed onto the two legs, "Return me my legs!" The chest opened up, and other heads and eyes flew over to attack Cripple. Emperor Yanfeng shouted fiercely and spat out a blood arrow from his mouth. That blood arrow transformed into a blood dragon which soared into the sky. Emperor Yanfeng jumped onto its back and went straight for the chest in the sky. Blind pushed himself up with his huge spear and leaped into the sky. Divine Spear Long Tuo shook its body to drag him along the air as it rushed toward that chest above. Granny C, Yu Zhaoqing, Empress Dowager, and the rest all executed their moves to rush into the sky, intercepting the chest. Bang! Emperor Yanfeng fell down and crashed heavily onto the ground, coughing out blood continuously. Cripple also fell right after, but he kept hugging the two legs tightly, not giving them up. Qin Mu sprinted over and stretched out his arms to catch, but his injuries all opened at that moment and he stumbled. Cripple fell from his arms and crashed into the ground. "Mu'er, you are unfilial." Cripple bounced once before landing down again. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. However, he still hugged the two legs tightly, his grip not loosening in the slightest. Qin Mu scratched his head and thought to himself, "If I had used secrets of dragon control to control those flood dragons, my speed could have been slightly faster." He immediately executed secrets of dragon control and numerous flood dragons slithered to him while suppressing their injuries. Bang, bang, bang. Experts continuously fell from the sky while Emperor Yanfeng struggled to get up. When he saw Empress Dowager falling down as well, he struggled to run over and catch her. Blood spewed out from his mouth as he was crushed again. When Qin Mu finally borrowed the power of the flood dragons, Yu Zhaoqing fell from the sky. He wanted to catch her, but saw her clothes transforming into scaled wings that flapped non-stop, stopping the momentum of her fall. Qin Mu stopped, but then Yu Zhaoqing suddenly lost her strength, and her scaled wings fell limp. She crashed into the ground, since it was already too late for Qin Mu to go and catch her. There was only Granny C and Blind left out of those who were still attacking the chest. Qin Mu then immediately rose into the sky. The flood dragons that were on his body were heavily injured and couldn't last long before they would have to leave his body, so he needed to end the battle fast. The battle in the sky was extremely strange. Granny C and Blind were covered in heavy injuries while standing on top of a chest and defending against attacks that came from all directions. What was attacking them were the body parts of Xing'an. His divine eyes shot out divine lights. The top of his skulls flew up like alms bowls, his fists, legs, and even his heart, liver, spleen, lungs, kidneys, as well as skin were all attacking them. Such a bizarre method of attacking had never been heard of before. Blind's black dragon coiled and spun frantically to defend, so Granny C had instead become the one with the strongest battle power. She used great overarching heavenly stars palm force to strike back the divine body parts that came for them. Qin Mu sprinted straight for the battlefield in the sky, his speed extremely fast as he passed by an eye. Swoosh! That eye disappeared, and a flood dragon left Qin Mu's body, moving away from the chest as fast as possible with the eye in its claw. The further it was, the weaker would Xianx's control become, and the harder it would be for him to collect back that body part. Qin Mu turned back, and his heaven-pilfering divine hands grabbed another eyeball that was shooting out divine light while flying in the sky. Another flood dragon then brought that second eyeball away. As Qin Mu sprinted frantically through the sky, he stole the various body parts that were surrounding the chest and had the flood dragons around him to bring them away. There were fewer and fewer flood dragons, and his speed gradually slowed down. Suddenly, strands of hair filled the sky like a black rainstorm and came for him. Mooer, watch out! Granny C and Blind rushed over to his side to block that attack. Granny C's palms faced the black rainstorm and pushed it back, causing countless black hair to fly back like black needles. Blind's spear stabbed out and pierced the chest with a loud bang. Energy came bounding over from the inside, forcing Divine Spear Long Tua back, and the body parts immediately swarmed back into the chest through the hole. The chest then broke away and escaped. Blind took a step to give chase, but he suddenly grunted. His wounds erupted, and he almost fell from the sky. The speed of the chest was extremely fast, moving 1,000 miles in an instant. At that moment, a resounding voice rang out. Every cloud has. A horizontal and a vertical knife light shone in the sky before returning back into darkness. A silver lining. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 408. The Two Great and Scrupulous Businesswomen. Qin Mu executed 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening skill to look at the 2 vertical and horizontal knife lights. The chest was sliced into 2, and it was hard to say how many limbs came falling out, scattering in all directions. Some flew into the sky, some went into the forest, and some escaped into the earth. Heaven Knife! Xianx's voice came from all directions. You will all become part of my collection sooner or later. A majestic figure rushed over and raised his hands with which the knives fell, mincing all the broken limbs that didn't escape in time. Grandpa Butcher, don't let go of Xianx, Qin Mu shouted. However, his cultivation wasn't strong enough for his voice to travel that far. So Granny C immediately transmitted her voice, and Butcher exploded with a shout. A pig slaughter knife fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground. Knife chi slashed in all directions underground, trying to force out Xianx's body parts that were escaping below. At the same time, another knife flew up and sliced through the air. After a moment, 2 knives flew back, and Butcher grabbed hold of them while jumping away as though he was flying. On his way, he said, he was struck by my knife chi and won't be able to escape from my sense. I'll come back in a bit. Village chief and the rest still haven't come back? They are still guests at Old Ma's place. I was worried about here, so I came back earlier. Qin Mu relaxed, but at that moment Blind, who was at his side, suddenly swayed and fell from the sky. Qin Mu immediately grabbed him, and his body suddenly became incomparably heavy. Blind's divine spear Long Tua had lost its consciousness as well, since it had suffered severe damage just like its master. It was just that the spear was from a black dragon's bones. It was a divine dragon, one who was both psychic and intelligent, as well as truly heavy, and it pressed down on Qin Mu with immense weight. Granny C stretched her hand out to grab him and was dragged down from the sky too. Only when they were about to hit the ground did they halt in the air. The 3 people landed safely, and the final flood dragon on Qin Mu's body slid down and lay on the ground like a dead snake, gasping for breath. Bloody foam kept flowing out from its mouth. Qin Mu forced himself to stand straight, even if his hands and legs were trembling uncontrollably. His injuries were also extremely heavy, barely not resulting in his death. If it wasn't for Blind, Cripple, and Deaf who had saved him in time, he would have been captured or killed by Xianx. Even when he had borrowed the Flood Dragon's power to join the battle, he had shown a severe lack of battle power and experience. In a life-and-death fight with an existence like Xing'an, he could only exhaust all his strength in turning the tables with some clever tricks. Luckily, he still succeeded in that this time. However, when he looked around and saw that the manor was covered with experts that were all heavily injured, he couldn't help being aghast. Not to mention existences like Blind, Deaf, Cripple, Emperor Yanfeng, and Li Tianxing. Even his flood dragons were all much stronger and terrifying than some existences of cult master level in the martial world. Many strong practitioners like Empress Dowager and various female heroes, as well as existences such as Yu Zhaoqing, were actually all defeated. If it wasn't for that dose of supplement, everyone would have probably been killed by Xing'an. Strong. He is really King strong. Ow! Ow! Just as Qin Mu started speaking, his ears began to hurt as Granny C pulled on his earlobes. Saying vulgarities again, she said unpleasantly. Who taught you that? Butcher, or is it Patriarch? Or is it some shady gang of scoundrels you have friend outside? Ow! I will stop. Granny, let go, please. Granny C let go, and Qin Mu sighed in relief. He rubbed his ear and probed. Granny C, now that Li Tianxing has left, you don't need to continue disguising yourself in ugly skins. Right? Don't be sad. Who's sad? Granny C walked forward while shaking her head. Li Tianxing is dead, so I can finally be free of my burden. I should be happy instead. Even though she said that, she didn't show any smile, but instead had a sorrowful expression. She avoided Qin Mu, for she didn't want him to see her when she was weak. She summoned the demons in the halls to carry everyone that was injured inside the buildings. Qin Mu summoned the injured flood dragons over, and they brought all of Xing'an's body parts they had snatched away, throwing all of them into the true dragon's nest. The inner space within it could block any connection, but Qin Mu was still not at ease. He made the Emperor's disc transform into the true Dragon Lord and had it enter the dragon's nest. Cripple was hugging his legs when he fainted, so Qin Mu had to waste quite some effort to pull them away. He then found Deaf's painting and threw it in the seal of the true dragon's nest as well. After doing all of that, he let out a sigh of relief and walked into the hall to help treat everyone. However, there were some people whose injuries were too heavy and they could die at any moment. If he cured everyone one by one, it would take too much time, and before he could reach the end, a number of people would have already died. Qin Mu could only call the dragon Qilin over. Fatty dragon, I've reared you for 1,000 days to be useful now, so go lick all of them. The dragon Qilin hesitated, whining, Cult master, where would I have that much drool? Shoo, don't say drool. Hu Linger immediately jumped on the dragon Qilin's ear and whispered, Call it dragon saliva. If you call it drool, we won't be able to sell it in the future. Lick them properly, and I'll ask young master to increase your meal. The dragon Qilin was instantly motivated and headed off for work. Sister Linger, don't forget about increased meals. Qin Mu picked out the people who had the most severe injuries and diagnosed them first. He fetched some silver needles to first seal their wounds and suppress their injuries. He then refined pills to treat them, but his hands were still trembling, and 2 furnaces of medicine were spoiled. He composed himself and first treated his own injuries. Once his hands no longer trembled, he then started to diagnose others and refine pills for others. There were a lot of casualties, and all their injuries were different. Qin Mu first treated them once just to prevent their injuries from erupting, so their lives wouldn't be in danger. Only after that did he start to carefully diagnose them. His flood dragons were also injured pretty badly. They showed their wounds to the dragon Qilin for him to lick, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, making those flood dragons curse him with Maha. Ling Yuxiu, Yan Jingjing, Si Yunxiang, and Hu Linger also came to help. After treating everyone for half a day, Qin Mu was completely exhausted and simply couldn't hold on any longer. The injuries on his body were not yet healed yet, so he could only go and rest first. Luckily, there were no more lethal injuries left. Most of the patients had already woken up, even if they still needed more attention to fully heal. Qin Mu slept for the whole night. When he woke up, the sky was still not light yet, and he could hear Granny C's voice. He walked out of the room to see her directing over a dozen mermaids to make breakfast. He sat down on the stone stairs in front of the hall and looked at her back, his heart at peace. It was Granny C, not Li Tianxing. The old cult master had really died. What concerned that man? Qin Mu had no liking for him. Li Tianxing wasn't qualified for the title of cult master, making Heavenly Saint Cult miss out on 40 years of development. If it wasn't for Patriarch, who acted as the stabilizing force, Heavenly Saint Cult would have long been annexed by Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yanfeng. However, at the end, he had still managed to do what a master should do. He had understood the great educational part of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. He had comprehended it and passed it down. However, when one looked at his life, failures were still in the majority. Granny C turned back to look at him, and Qin Mu, who was on the stone steps, smiled at her. The east was suffused in white as though a huge fish had flipped over on its belly. The sun rose and roasted its skin into a reddish-yellow color. After breakfast, Qin Mu treated himself first. Then, when his injuries were somewhat better, he went to treat others. The girls also came to help. After being busy for more than half a day, it was hard to say how many furnaces of pills Qin Mu had refined. He had almost exhausted himself to the brink again, and the spirit herbs in his Taotai sack were more or less used up. Those in Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's Taotai sack were also nearly exhausted. Qin Mu wanted to go bring more himself, but he truly didn't have the strength, so he could only write down the names of what he needed and let Hu Linger ride the Dragon Qilin to Relax Prefecture to bring them. The owner of the herb shop is from Heavenly Saint Cult, so Saint Xiang, you shall follow and get them to prepare the herbs. If there's no one there, use a fast ship to transport them from where you can. Also, prepare 26 huge cauldrons and a steamer that could be used to cook humans. Some of these people's injuries are very complicated, so I'll have to boil and steam them. Yan Jingjing was excited. I want to go as well. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment. Good sister, I promised to bring you out to play, but I didn't expect to encounter something like that. I have no time to play with you now, so it'll be good for you to go to Relax Prefecture and take a walk there. Xianxia was delighted. Even if it's the property of the cult, I will still have to charge for the herbs. Mobilizing fast ships also requires quite a bit of great abundance coins. Qin Mu waved his hand. Linger has the money, don't worry. Hu Linger and Xianxia looked each other in the eye, and sparks flew between the demon and the human. There was an atmosphere like a huge battle was about to break out. The two girls sat on the Dragon Qilin's back and went out of the manor. Hu Linger sneered. Saint Xiang, you can scam the young master, but you can't scam me. You can forget about taking advantage of me. Xianxia chuckled and said, I naturally know how good Linger is, so I said those words to Cult Master. Think about it, most of the people injured are not from Heavenly Saint Cult. But since the Cult Master still wants the sacred cult to prepare the medicine, we naturally have to collect money. But from who? Not from the Cult Master, certainly. We will then collect it from the Emperor. Sister Linger, stop haggling with me. Instead, you should raise the price as high as possible and let us ruthlessly earn money from the Emperor. Hu Linger shook her head. There's morality in trading. You can't scam the Emperor either. You have to charge according to the prices of the spirit herbs. Xianxia argued with Hu Linger, but she didn't yield no matter what. The two girls settled on the prices, and Hu Linger thought to herself, after buying herbs from you, I shall give a false report to the Emperor. That way I will be able to earn a huge profit. If I wallow in the mire with you, I will have to split the loot with you, but if I cut you out of the equation, all of the loot will belong to me. Around 10 days were required for the medicine shop in Relax Prefecture to prepare all the herbs. In the meantime, Qin Mu finished recuperating, but there were still some hidden injuries that were yet to heal. After doing nothing for a few days and not seeing Butcher returning, Qin Mu suddenly thought of something. Wang Muron's insight is extraordinary, and he had suggested Sister Yushio and I to work together to found the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit which would benefit the future generations. I have been really busy these few days, so I had totally forgotten about it. He found Ling Yushio and told her about it. Astonished, she asked, If the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit was really founded by us, could we be considered masters? Masters! Qin Mu burst out laughing. Is eternal peace imperial preceptor considered a master? When Ling Yuxiu talked about eternal peace imperial preceptor, she was full of respect and said, how could eternal peace imperial preceptor be just a master? The 3 basic sword forms are enough for his name to go down in history and never be forgotten by the world. Qin Mu smiled and said, the merit of his 3 basic sword forms is somewhat weaker than that of our 6 directions primordial spirit. As long as we can complete the technique and cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit, the paths, skills, and divine arts will all take a huge step ahead, benefiting billions of people. Ling Yuxiu's mind was blown. She found it hard to believe. The 6 directions primordial spirit that we cultivated by accident is really that important? Then what are we waiting for? She immediately pulled Qin Mu's hand and walked out of the hall excitedly. Emperor Yanfeng, Empress Dowager, and the rest of the patient had been brought out by the deer demons to bask in the sunshine. Emperor Yanfeng was injured pretty heavily and had been talking to Yu Zhaoqing when he saw the pair of youngsters running out excitedly. Show her. Where are you going? To cultivate 6 directions primordial spirit. Emperor Yanfeng stared at her blankly. 6 directions primordial spirit? How to cultivate it? Ling Yuxiu held Qin Mu's hand as she ran into the distance, her voice coming from afar. Primordial spirit dual cultivation. My brother said this is called primordial spirit dual cultivation. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 409. Roaming 70,000 miles. Emperor Yanfeng instantly had a feeling that his white cabbage had been ravaged by a wild boar, and that the wild boar had come back again to ravage it once more. He immediately began to struggle to get up, wanting to stop this pair of youths, but a few deer demons walked over. They pressed him down, giving him no choice but to remain in place. A female deer demon held some flowers in her hands and signaled for the emperor to not move, then placed the beautiful flowers on his head. Some mermaids walked over and presented him with red fruits that were making a fuss. A bunch of them clamored in the plate, giving him a shock. The tree demons surveyed the sickbeds, and whoever was not well behaved would be whipped on the buttocks. Soon, all the famous people of the martial world, the emperor and empress dowager included, were much quieter. After the demons finished their patrol, the emperor wanted to hurry over to catch up to the youths, but Empress Dowager said lazily, Emperor, save yourself the trouble. The younger generations will do all right on their own. If you worry so much, won't Xiao'er be unable to marry in the future? Mother might not know, but the danger concealed in primordial spirit dual cultivation is extremely huge. It should not be done if the 2 people aren't husband and wife. If Xiao'er cultivated primordial spirit dual cultivation with him, their primordial spirits would resonate with each other, and they would ascend to bliss together. If after that she married someone in the future, she wouldn't be able to resonate with my son-in-law in the future. And without resonance, there won't be any feeling. If the pleasure of their primordial spirit resonating together is not present, she will divorce even if she marries. Empress Dowager smiled and said, Take him in as your son-in-law then. What's there to be alarmed about? What's more, who dares to divorce a princess of the royal family? Emperor Yanfeng was silent for a moment. Mother, he's heavenly devil cult master and also human emperor. I'm not too at ease. Empress Dowager also fell silent as she knew what he meant. Heavenly devil cult master had an overpowering influence. The emperor was the person with the highest influence in the imperial court, while heavenly devil cult master was the person with the highest influence in the martial world. The influence of heavenly devil cult had spread throughout it, and even to every corner of the imperial court. It was especially so when Qin Mu had become the heavenly devil cult master. Heavenly devil cult prospered more and more, surpassing their peak period in history. No matter if it was Dao sect or Great Thunderclap Monastery, they were all crippled by Qin Mu, and even the imperial court could no longer contend against it. After all, the imperial court was reforming, and it needed the help of heavenly devil cult for many. So many experts from the cult had entered the imperial court. Eternal Peace Empire, from the bottom to the top, was filled with the influence of heavenly devil cult. Besides that, Qin Mu was much more open-minded than Tao Master and Rulai. He had reformed heavenly devil cult and set up school halls, learning from Imperial Preceptor's actions and grooming an endless supply of talents for heavenly devil cult. In just 2 years after Qin Mu had become the cult master, he had invoked a huge transformation, and this worried Emperor and Empress Dowager. What was even more worrying was that Qin Mu had many experts around him and even the identity of the human emperor. If he took out his human emperor's seal, even Tao Sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery, and Little Jade Capital would have to listen to his commands. That would be terrifying. Looking from this point, Qin Mu was definitely not the best candidate for the emperor's son-in-law. If he took up that role, it would be easy for him to seize power from him. That was what Emperor Yanfeng was worried about. While he was still alive, Qin Mu wouldn't be able to seize his power, but once he was gone, the change of ownership could happen with a snap of his fingers. Without anyone's notice, the simple and honest child that had come to Eternal Peace Empire 2 years ago had grown into a fierce tiger that could fight with dragons. It was truly terrifying. Even if Qin Mu didn't have the thought to seize power, what about the next heavenly devil cult master? Who could be certain that the next heavenly devil cult master who inherited the power left behind by Qin Mu would not stir at the thought of being an emperor? As the emperor, you indeed shouldn't entrust your power to the pity of others. You have done what was right, Empress Dowager said. However, why do I still see hesitation in you? You are on guard against Cult Master Qin, yet you still indulge him. This isn't the way you do things. In order to carry out the reform with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, you even allowed him to poison me, making me lie on the sickbed for so many years, unable to dabble in any political affairs. Such a ruthless man is the emperor of our Ling family. Emperor Yanfeng was full of guilt. Fu Yuanqing poisoning mother was indeed silently allowed by me. If I didn't do that, mother's influence in the imperial court would have simply been too huge, and it would have been very hard for Imperial Preceptor and I to control everything. I'm unfilial, but I could only let mother be quiet for a period of time. Even if there was no Minister Qin, I would still have had Fu Yuanqing remove the poison in mother's body after I took full control of the court. Empress Dowager sighed and said, "You have done well. You are really my son. Your ruthlessness surpasses even mine own back then. So why aren't you laying your hands on Cult Master Qin?" Emperor Yanfeng was silent before saying tartly, I'm afraid Imperial Preceptor and I will fail, and once we fail, we will die miserably. The fate of the Empire, the lives of the people can't be all pinned down on me, and neither can they be pinned on our Ling family. I need a successor to continue the reform after Imperial Preceptor and I fail. There's no one like this in Ling family, but Heavenly Devil Cult Master is such a person. Empress Dowager looked at his face carefully and sighed. I never thought that my son would be such a person. I have looked at you superficially. Emperor, let Shoer go with Minister Qin. If you think he can succeed you, let Shoer be with him. Our Ling family won't be wiped out even if Imperial Preceptor and you fail. Emperor Yanfeng's heart stirred slightly, and he carefully thought about the meaning of her words before nodding slowly. You are a good emperor, and Imperial Preceptor is also a good Imperial Preceptor. Empress Dowager looked at the mountains covered in fog with a peaceful face and said in a gentle voice, I won't go against the both of you anymore. Feel free to change this world as you like. Carry out the reform to your heart's content. I shall live in seclusion in this forest, to fight with these little hussies over my lover. Emperor Yanfeng's face turned black again and he muttered, Mother, the face of the royal family. Empress Dowager basked under the sun and said with a smile that was not a smile, You're a filial son. So why won't you think about the happiness of your old mother? I have laid on the sickbed for so many years, and I clearly know it's Imperial Preceptor and you're doing, but have I ever grumbled at you? I only have this wish right now, so let me go. Let me fight with these little hussies, to enjoy myself for the last bit. Emperor Yanfeng was solemn when he nodded. Does mother need my help to eliminate her competitors? I had climbed to the current position after countless hardships in the chambers of concubines, and you think I still need your help? You're underestimating me. At the lake beside the manor, Qin Mu took out a stick of incense and stabbed it on the shore ground, lighting it up. Ling Yuxiu sniffed the abnormal fragrance and asked curiously, "What's this incense for?" "This is Soul Guide incense," Qin Mu said with a smile. "I imprinted the runes of Soul Guide into this incense and added over 100 perfumes into it. Even though there's no divine art of Soul Guide, it can still guide the way. If our primordial spirits get lost, when this incense finishes burning, the power of the runes will burst forth. When our corporeal bodies smell the fragrance, it will guide our primordial spirits back to our corporeal bodies. This way, there's no need for others to protect us." Ling Yuxiu already held Qin Mu's right hand, so he raised his left one for her to take as well. The two of them held hands, their eyes locked on each other. They smiled, and their primordial spirit instantly left their bodies. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu both had the experience of their primordial spirit leaving their bodies to roam the void. After that, the two of them tried to cultivate them on their own, but the effect wasn't great. They were trying to cultivate what they had comprehended, but it was the act of changing coincidence into certainty, so it was naturally difficult. Back then, Qin Mu had met Su Xianxia. He thought that the other was another overlord body, and his mind grew agitated. That had then led him to experience his primordial spirit leaving his body to roam the void with Ling Yuxiu by coincidence. Once their primordial spirits left their bodies, the two of them realized what they had done. Their luck was out of the ordinary, but it was just a random occurrence. How to change that coincidence into certainty was of utmost importance to them. At that moment, their primordial spirits had left their bodies and roamed together, trying to find the law of behavior in themselves. They noticed that their primordial spirits were tangled with each other and were resonating. It was different from primordial spirit dual cultivation they had experienced by accident the previous time. Primordial spirit was formed by the spirit embryo and soul. When it left the body, the souls resonated with each other, and the primordial spirits were also resonating with each other. There was a numbing throb that spread to all corners. Such a feeling was lasting and unforgettable. As the two youths roamed in the void, they saw flowers as big as woven mats. They didn't know their names. There was also grass like sharp swords which they hadn't seen before. There were jellyfish in the sky, creating a magnificent scenery, which was very different from that of eternal peace. The youths lingered around. Is this what we are really seeing, or is it just a shared hallucination? The two of them enjoyed themselves and forgot to go back. But at that moment, they suddenly smelled a strong, abnormal fragrance and instantly felt that they were being guided back by an invisible force. Ling Yuxiu immediately grabbed a small fish while saying, "Whether it's real or a hallucination, we will know when we return back to our corporeal bodies." Swoosh! The boundless scenery in front of their eyes changed, and the vision suddenly vanished. They returned back to their corporeal bodies where they stood with their hands together and eyes locked onto each other. Ling Yuxiu let go of Qin Mu's palm and saw a small fish flipping around in her palm. "It's real! How marvelous!" She bent over and placed the little fish in her hands into the water. It swam and struggled, then flipped over and almost drowned. Ling Yuxiu immediately ran over and fished it out. She saw the little fish coughing with all its might, spitting out the water in its stomach before flapping its unproportionate fins to fly into the sky. While Ling Yuxiu stared at it in astonishment, the small fish flew back and spat a jet of water out of its mouth, spraying her face. Ling Yuxiu was furious and stretched her hand out to grab the fish, but it flapped its fins to fly away. "Stupid fish!" Ling Yuxiu washed her face and turned back to ask curiously, "The one who herds cows, where did we go?" Qin Mu pondered it for a moment before saying, "It should be the East Sea region in Great Ruins. That place has a huge sea which later became a basin. The seawater has vanished, but the life forms there survived. Many fish learned how to fly, as did the flowers. The East Sea in Great Ruins? How far away is it?" "Over 70,000 miles. Ling Yuxiu jumped in shock, crying out, "We went over 70,000 miles in the time it takes to burn an incense stick, and returned?" Qin Mu nodded and stared blankly into the distance. Traveling 70,000 miles in such a short time is indeed unbelievable. Why can't the corporeal body be that fast? If the corporeal body had the speed of the primordial spirit, how good would it be? Ling Yusho burst out laughing. You are too childish. Primordial spirit has no weight, so it can naturally run faster. The corporeal body has weight, so it's naturally slower. Do you have more soul guide incense? We only focused on playing and didn't think about the technique to cultivate primordial spirit. We need to try again. Qin Mu reminisced about the marvel of their primordial spirits resonating together and got slightly greedy. He immediately nodded again. We need to try again. We can't just focus on playing though, since this is an important matter. After the time it takes to burn an incense stick, the primordial spirits returned to the bodies again and Qin Mu scratched his head. Do you want to go another time? Ling Yusho nodded gravely. This time we'll definitely not play. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 410. Primordial Spirit Guide. Young people know how to play. In front of the hall, Blind was basking in the sun and talking to Deaf. Look at their sparkling youthfulness. They are brimming with enthusiasm and vigor, being so diligent with dual cultivating. Deaf, have you ever thought of finding a partner? Deaf ignored him and pointed at his ear holes, showing that he couldn't hear what he was talking about. Playing deaf. Blind sneered and propped himself on his cane to stand up. He hobbled over to Emperor Yanfeng's side and said, In-law, your daughter is currently dual cultivating with my Moor. Why are you puking blood? You are still scolding me. How can an emperor be scolding people? Where's the law? You still dare to hit me? You think I'm scared of you? Qin Mu and Ling Yusho tried over and over again. When they had played enough, they finally agreed that they weren't going to finish the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit if they continued like that. The two of them then became honest and started to analyze the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit. I feel we can start from the resonation of souls and the primordial spirits. Ling Yusho said seriously. If the souls and primordial spirits of 2 people were to resonate together, they could lend each other strength to make their primordial spirits leave their body. Qin Mu nodded and pondered it for a moment. However, that's when the primordial spirit is already cultivated. What if it isn't? Before the resonation of primordial spirits, the main thing is to fuse the spirit embryo and the soul. Ling Yusho was excited. In that case, we shall start from the resonation of souls. Resonation of souls, using it to guide the spirit embryo. Then fusing the soul and the spirit embryo to form the primordial spirit. Qin Mu's eyes lit up and he said, The technique will need 2 people to cultivate together. I will use my soul to guide your spirit embryo, and you will use your soul to guide my spirit embryo. At the instant when the souls mix, we will both leave our bodies. Our souls will then swap and the primordial spirits will naturally be formed. The 2 of them looked at each other with extreme excitement. The theory had been voiced by them. Qin Mu's soul would guide Ling Yusho's soul and vice versa. The next step would then be the most important one. Their souls and spirit embryos would fly out of their bodies, and by borrowing the resonation to call out to each other, the souls would fuse with the other's spirit embryo. The resonation of primordial spirit would then assure that it wouldn't separate back into spirit embryo and soul. That way, primordial spirit would be cultivated in 6 directions realm. Ling Yu suddenly became worried. The trouble here will be how to make this theory into technique, to guide one another's soul and spirit embryo. Qin Mu muttered to himself irresolutely and walked 2 rounds. This kind of technique needs one to mobilize their primordial spirit, soul, and spirit embryo at the same time. The most crucial thing is that both of them can't be on guard against each other, but must be the closest of kin, so close that they can't have any selfishness. Only then can they hand their own spirit and soul to each other without any reservation. Ling Yusho nodded and felt a sweetness in her heart. When Qin Mu said it like that, didn't it mean that she was his closest kin and he trusted her without any reserve? Don't ask how others can cultivate. Let's create the technique first. Qin Mu roused his spirit and he made a few more soul guide incenses sticks. The 2 of them then used their souls to guide each other's spirit embryos, comprehending their own vital qi circulation method before recording it. After trying it out a few times, they were slightly tired and could only stop to rest. They had played too many times earlier, which resulted in their vitality being somewhat lacking. After 6 days, Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu tidied up the general idea of the technique and finally decided on the general principles. For everything else, they would have to make detailed corrections on the basis of the general principles. Butcher had yet to return from chasing Xing'an, which made Qin Mu, Granny C, and the rest slightly worried. Xing'an was too strong after all. If he solved the problem of the supplement and his corporeal body returned back to normal, Butcher might not be his opponent. Xing'an's medical expertise was remarkable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to swap his body parts however he liked. So solving the problem with the supplement shouldn't have been too difficult for him. Xianxia, Yan Jingjing, and Hu Linger sat on a fast ship which sailed over from Relax Prefecture, bringing various herbs, cauldrons, and steamers. Qin Mu placed the matter of Butcher chasing Xing'an aside and immediately became busy again. He raised the cauldrons and worked hard to brew the medicinal concoctions, cooking and steaming all the patients. Mu'er, those with low cultivation can't be steamed, they will get cooked. Granny C immediately said, I understand. Qin Mu arranged everything properly and had the deer demons pay attention to the heat control while he went to the true dragon's nest. He took out 5 legs and asked Cripple, Grandpa Cripple, look at these legs, which 2 of them are yours? Cripple differentiated them and chose 2 legs. These 2. Mu'er, why do you have so many legs here? What are they for? Qin Mu smiled and said, for spares. If Grandpa Cripple's legs go missing again, the other 3 legs can be used for replacement. Pa. Children's words carry no harm. Go knock on wood. Knock on wood. Cripple spat twice, and Qin Mu immediately attended to him. He boiled a cauldron of medicinal concoction and prepared his carefree sword, ointment, and dragon's saliva to reattach Cripple's legs. It was a walk in the park for him. After all, he had reattached Cripple and Butcher's body parts before, so attaching the 2 legs again was not difficult for him. It was even relaxing. Mu'er's craft is getting better and better, Cripple praised. On the side, Def raised his eyebrows and said, that's because you got sliced apart by others too many times and he had many chances to train. Cripple was furious, but Qin Mu was carrying him to soak in the medicinal concoction. Pa, old man's words carry no harm. Go knock on wood. Knock on wood. While the 2 of them squabbled, Qin Mu carried a jade dragon bowl to find Blind. Grandpa Blind, which of these divine eyes are yours? There were over 10 eyeballs in the bowl, and every one of them was a divine eye collected by Xing'an. If they weren't activated, he couldn't see which 2 of them had 9 heavens hidden inside of them. The eyeballs were all similar from the outside. Blind stretched his hand out to touch and picked out 2 eyeballs. He frowned and said, it's been a long time since my eyes had been dug out, and the wounds have already healed completely. Is there still hope to reattach my eyes? Qin Mu threw the other eyes back into the true dragon's nest with the jade dragon bowl before examining Blind's eyes in detail. He looked at them seriously. Blind's expression was calm as he smiled. It's okay if you can't reattach them. I'm already used to being like this. I can reattach them, but some of the nerves in the eyes have already withered. I need to nurse the eyes for a few days first, then I might just be able to use medicine to revive the activity of those nerves. Qin Mu raised his head and smiled. Grandpa Blind, don't worry. Even though my medical expertise isn't as good as that of Grandpa Apothecary, I'm still number 2 in the world after all. He pondered over the matter for a moment, then prepared herbs to refine medicine for Blind. The structure of the nerves in the eyes was even more complicated than in the heart. On top of that, the degree of delicateness was equivalent to the brain, so Qin Mu had no choice but to be careful in carrying things out. He made sure that all the herbs were pure and there wouldn't be any side effects. He used all he knew to ensure that the medicinal energy would be gentle yet able to activate the nerves. It was one of the greatest tests for him. Qin Mu prepared numerous methods to increase the activity of the nerves in the eyes. Other than what could be consumed orally and applied externally, he even made a small machine which contained a medicinal concoction. It was able to automatically heat up the medicine into steam to nourish Blind's eye sockets. Other than that, A medicinal concoction which was refined over and over again was injected into the half-dead muscles of Blind's eyes using a hollow silver needle. This could be said to be applying all the methods together. After several days of nursing, Blind felt his eye sockets burning, and there seemed to be many fine tentacles growing out in them. Only then did Qin Mu made his move to reconnect the nerves of the eyes for him. He used ribbons to wrap some crushed spirit pills around his head, covering his eyes. Grandpa Blind, after the muscles and nerves are completely healed, you can take off the ribbon. Qin Mu instructed, then summoned a tree demon over, reminding him to change medicine for Blind on time. That tree demon nodded repeatedly and just rooted himself in front of Blind to wait for the time to change medicine. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief and checked on the dragon's nest. He thought to himself, if I put all of the body parts from Xianxia together, I can also piece a body of a god. It's a pity I don't know what weird technique Xianxia has cultivated. He had definitely kept some body part of his own, or his primordial spirit. Otherwise, he wouldn't still be alive. Strange, which part of his body has he kept? When he was fighting with Xianxia, he had changed his head, so his brain had naturally been changed as well. His divine blood, heart, and legs had all changed as well. What was even more terrifying was that he had different primordial spirits, and he could change them. When he was fighting with Yu Zhaoqing, he used his primordial spirits, using different ones to attack and injure her severely. Yet there had to be a part of his original body remaining, something which wasn't changed. All the other parts could be given up, but not that one. It was the gate to his vitality. Only by eradicating it could he be killed. All his body parts were replaced, but his soul definitely can't be replaced. Qin Mu's eyes lit up, and he found Granny C to talk about it, since her study on souls was much more profound than his. Soul is separated into souls and spirits. The souls are the heaven soul at the heart of the brows, the earth soul at the tailbone, and the life soul at the navel. The 7 spirits are the canine corpse at the top of the head, the concealed sparrow at the ajna, the Eve sparrow at the laryngeal prominence, the seizing thief at the heart, the not toxic at the navel, the remove filth at the perineum, and the smelly lung at the lungs. According to logic, changing these parts would mean that his soul wouldn't be complete, yet he clearly had a complete soul. Qin Mu racked his brains. According to Granny C's deduction, Xianxia's head, dantian, backbone, neck, lungs, heart, and intestines had to be preserved, or he would need his soul to live in the body he had seized. However, when Blind and the rest destroyed Xianxia's heart, squashed his head, and even made his backbone slid out of his body, Xianxia's soul didn't receive any heavy injuries and could still repair his body. This means that the head, dantian, backbone, neck, lungs, heart, and intestines of Xianxia's original body are still around. His soul is still in his original body and would only live in the body he had seized when necessary. In that case, his original body parts should be hidden in. He and Granny C looked each other in the eyes and blinked. Xianxia's chest. The original body should be hidden in the chest. Butcher had split it open, but the original body might have escaped the damage. He still has a weakness. Qin Mu composed himself. Even if Grandpa Butcher can't kill him, as long as he still carries a chest the next time he appears, it will confirm my guess. Granny C nodded. As long as he shows up with the chest, it means his original body is hidden inside and he isn't invincible. Killing him then will be much easier.